My name's Karen Barker and I'm Executive Manager of the Australia-India Institute. Please note that this event is being recorded, so could I ask you to please mute your microphones until you get to the Q&A and breakout room stage, but please do turn your cameras on whenever possible. We'd love to see who's here with us this afternoon. So welcome to this workshop. It's on water informatics and it's the final workshop in our series of 4 workshops that we're running as part of the Australia-India Technical Exchange Program in Water and Food Security. And we're delighted to be partnering with the Australia-India Water Centre for this workshop series. So I'm just going to pause for a moment and acknowledge the traditional owners of Australia. And for those of you who are joining us from India, just to let you know, we make this acknowledgement of Australia's traditional owners in recognition of the ongoing and unbroken connection between Australia's First Peoples and the land that we call Australia. And that includes all the water and waterways. So it's particularly relevant to our program here today. So I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, the elders past and present of the well, today I'm joining you from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present and extend my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today. I'm not going to take up too much of your time now. I'm going to introduce Professor Scott Sheppard to make some welcoming remarks. So Professor Sheppard is the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of International and External Relations at Queensland University of Technology. And I invite you, Professor Sheppard, to say a few words.
Thank you, Karen, and good afternoon, colleagues, one and all. It's a great pleasure on behalf of QUT to be saying a few opening remarks this afternoon. Let me also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which I sit today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise that these lands have always been places of research, learning and teaching. In fact, very relevant to this topic today, QUT sits next to a large, rather dirty river that flooded again just recently. We've had our second once in 200-year flood in the last 5 years. So your conversations today are very relevant to this city, which is surrounded by a lot of water at the moment. So QUT is very pleased to support these workshops and the important work that all of you do on this really relevant topic, not just for both of our countries, but for the entire world. Water informatics are crucial to policy planning and decision making. I'd like to, on behalf of us all, thank the Australian India Institute and the Australian India Water Centre for organising this workshop series. QUT is a founding partner of the Australian India Water Centre, which was established in 2020. The centre has more than 20 members from universities and research institutions in both Australia and India. And its aim is the one we all share, to build collaboration in water research and education. These workshops are part of the activities of the Joint Working Group convened under the Memorandum of Understanding on Water Resource Management between the governments of India and Australia. This MOU aims to facilitate cooperation on water resource management through the sharing of policy and technical experience. The Joint Working Group is led in Australia by the Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment, and in India by the Ministry of Jal Shakti, the India's water ministry, through the Central Water Commission and the National Hydrology Project. I'd like, on behalf of us all, to thank both the Ministry and the Department for their support for this workshop series, and of course, for the Government of India's ongoing support of these initiatives. And on the Australian side, the Australian Department of Education, Skills and Employment in support. Shared research collaborations are critical to the relationships between our two countries, but also very critical to the complex problems that we're all interested in. Just a few examples of some of the collaborative work that QUT has been doing in this space. We also host the Centre for Agriculture and the Bioeconomy, which is focused on global food security, helping farmers grow more food with less resources, and that means using less water. This research centre looks at ways to improve productivity and biodiversity through better management of crops, soil, energy and water. The centre also has a large focus on the waste, wealth and circular economy. QUT has been fortunate to have a sustained and long-term relationship with India, particularly in the research space, supported by the Australian Strategic Fund and on the Indian side by that same fund. We welcomed the Indian High Commissioner to Australia here not that long ago, which allowed us to showcase some of the work we do, particularly in the tropical crops area, where we have some of the world's leading collaborative research in sugar, banana, ironically also funded by the government of India to look at how we can build more crop-resistant bananas and more crop condition and drought-resistant crops to feed the people of both our countries. The joint support of the Government of India and the Australian Government and Strategic Research Fund has been warmly welcomed by all of our universities and research institutes, and together we would encourage both sides to continue to support this valuable research. QUT is committed to building these collaborative networks along with the next generation of researchers, and a great example of that is the joint PhD programs that many of our institutions have. In our case with IIIT Delhi, that's now in its 10th year, where we enable young doctoral students to undertake research studies at both institutions. And we have a similar one with the IIIT Madras. Like many of our universities, we benefit from the support of our host governments, and we like that and support that to continue into the future. So finally, I'd like to thank all our distinguished speakers, particularly those who've joined us from India and throughout Australia. I wish you all the best for fruitful discussions in this final workshop in the series and continued deep collaboration between our two countries. Enjoy the afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Professor Sheppard. It was really interesting to hear all about the research collaborations that QUT has with India and Indian researchers. And that's because building research collaboration is one of the main objectives of these workshops. And I just wanted to let you know that about an initiative, or let everybody know about an initiative that the Australia-India Institute has developed to support Australia-India researcher collaboration. We've set up a virtual platform called the Australia Researcher Cooperation Hub, or ARCH India, with the support from the Department of Education from the Australian government. And that's a virtual platform that allows researchers from both countries to connect and share information and expertise. And I've just sent through a message on the chat with the link to the website, and I invite you all to explore that website and to register your researcher profile there and indicate whether you're interested in collaborating with your counterparts in the other country. And please keep an eye on that website, because we're going to be using it to support, to promote some opportunities and seed funding for water researchers to collaborate in the coming months. Right, well, we're going to move straight into the technical part of our workshop, and I'll just briefly run through the format with you. We're going to start with two 20-minute presentations, and there'll be a short time for questions after each of them. Then we'll have some breakout room discussions for about half an hour, and then we'll have a few more panelists come and talk to us, and then an open forum where you get to ask questions of all of our presenters and panelists today. So just before I start to introduce our speakers, I just wanted to remind you that we're here to share expertise and experiences today, and we'd love to hear from all of you in the breakout rooms and in the discussions and the questions and answers. So we really value your contribution today. And we also want to use this workshop today as an opportunity for you to reflect on research collaborations that you might like to undertake in the future. And there'll be an opportunity for you at the end of this program to network with each other to talk about some ideas that you might have about collaborations. So I'd like to introduce our first presenter. Janice Green is from the Australian Bureau of Meteorology, and that is the institute which is also Australia's National Water Information Agency. She leads a team responsible for the preparation of the National Water Information products and services. And she herself is a specialist in hydrology, hydrometeorology, and water resources assessment. So Janice, could I please invite you to address some remarks to us? We look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Karen. And can I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Ngunnawal lands that I'm presenting from, and also say good morning to all our colleagues from India. Alex, if you could share my slide, that'd be great. Water is something which is vital for life. In India, as well as in Australia, we seem to either have too much or not enough of it. And therefore, water data really is about saving the world one drop at a time. Next slide. This was particularly brought home to Australia during the middle of the Millennium Drought, where in 2006, the Prime Minister asked some seemingly simple questions, but which we weren't, as hydrologists, as water resource managers, able to answer. And these were questions about how much water is available, how much is allocated, how much is being used, who's trading it, where's the water going, and how much is being lost through evaporation, through transmission losses. How much is climate change impacting our rivers and aquifers, and how much water we can expect from those sources? And how is the rate and pattern of water use changing? And what is the outlook for the availability of water across Australia? Next. In response to in response to our inability to answer those seemingly simple questions, the Government of Australia implemented some water reforms, the National Plan for Water Security, under the ethos that you can't manage what you cannot measure. And as Karen said, the Bureau of Meteorology, who has a long history collecting meteorological information, was made the National Water Information Holder. And it was our responsibility to collect the information. We don't actually measure the stream flow or water data ourselves, but we collect and collate what other organisations are collecting. And we use that to produce products such as the National Water Account. And also we manage the water regulations. Next. Well, what I'm going to be talking about is specifically for Australia. Water data are very important across the whole world, including India. So what we're responsible for doing is collating all the information that's collected by the different states and territories across Australia. And we identified 11 categories of persons, so about 180 organisations, who collect about 10 categories of water information, which I'll go through in a minute, and 55 subcategories. And we required them to initially provide the whole historic archive and then to update these data in real time, daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly, depending on the type of information that's been collected. Now, as you can imagine, that's an enormous amount of data. To date, we've got over 42 million files. We have about 15,000 files added each day, and that's 4+ billion observations. And just to give you an indication of the amount of data, the map there shows the over 850,000 groundwater balls that are included in our database. Next. The type of information that we collect is streamflow data, groundwater data, which is often with groundwater, it's out of sight, out of mind. So collecting groundwater data from aquifers which aren't constrained by state boundaries was very important. Storage data, so how much water is in our storages? How is that storage level changing? Meteorological observations, which of course as the Bureau of Meteorology, we have been collecting for over 100 years. Information on water quality for both surface water and groundwater. Flood warning data, which if you've been watching the news, you would realise that we've been using a lot over recent months. And then looking specifically at urban data, we're looking at how much use data are being, is how much people are taking from the from the water resources, both surface water and groundwater. Who has a right, who has an allocation, and who's trading? And then urban data in terms of water supply to urban cities, wastewater, how much recycled water, stormwater is being used, and when people go on water restrictions. And then also some other metadata in terms of groundwater information, in terms of where the aquifers are, what their extent is, what's their geologic and hydrogeologic units. And then, as you saw on the map before, for over 850,000 bores, where they're located, what their purpose is for, their lithology and other information. Next. The information that we all need in order to manage our water resources covers the whole spectrum of time. It starts from hours when we're looking at emergency management, so flood warning, to weeks when we're looking at making allocations to irrigation, to cities and towns, months when we're looking at water restrictions, years when we're looking at making floodplain management plans and working out how to keep people safe during floods, and then decades when we're looking at, do we need to build a desalination plant or a second desalination plant for Sydney in order to secure the water supply for future decades? Next. But as valuable as water data is, it's only the beginning, the monitoring, the quality assuring, the archiving, and then reporting at a local level. What the Bureau was also given responsibility to was adding the value adding to the data. So we're, because different states collect data in slightly different ways or use slightly different terminology, we were given the task of standardizing the data, then integrating the data. So rather than presenting information just for the Australian Capital Territory, which is where I live, being able to present the information at a national level. We also were using the data to model, to predict, to interpolate, to analyse and compare, and then to be able to provide a national insight, which was what was lacking back in 2006. And the highlight, if you like, or the pinnacle of water information, being able to forecast what is going to happen in the next few hours, the next few days, the next season. Next. The other thing we were very keen to do, particularly as the Bureau of Meteorology, was to integrate the water data that we were collecting with the weather data and the climate data, and to be able to provide products and data sets which gave people an understanding of the situation at the moment, so awareness. Also being able to say, we've got a temperature in Canberra here at the moment of 9 degrees. How does that fit in with the longer term trends? How does that compare to what's happening in other cities? How does that compare over the longer time? And then forecasting, particularly in terms of stream flow, but also in terms of climate and the hydroclimatological extremes. Next, please. So using the data that we are provided, and we're still provided every day, we developed a suite of products. We have a water storages dashboard, and we've also got an app because a lot of people like to have a look at the storage information on their iPhones. And that provides for over 300 publicly owned storages. How much water is in the storage? How is that compared to yesterday, to last week, to last year? And gives an opportunity to show at a national and also an individual storage level, how the volume and the water available in the storages is changing. We also have our data warehouse, which we call Water Data Online, where we archive the data that are collected, those 11 categories of data from the 180 data providers, and where we make that information available so that people can have a look at stream flow, water quality, groundwater, storage data, and be able to look for their location or for locations more broadly. And as I said, we also for the first time are collecting groundwater information on a national basis. We have the information for over 800,000 bores, and you can see that in terms of the water levels, how the groundwater-dependent ecosystems are receiving water, where they're located. Next, please. Looking forward to more the moving away from the ones which provide us with situational awareness for where we are now. We also have a suite of products which use the information to provide us with perspective. For example, the National Water Account is exactly what it sounds like. It's an account which has line items of where the water resources are coming from, who's using them, so where they're going out, where the expenditure is, and how much we have left at the end of the financial year. And this allows us to compare how water's being used, how much is being left in a very systematic fashion. We also have water resources assessment, whereas the National Water Account is done for 13 regions across Australia, which make up about 80% of the water usage. The water resource assessments look at the national context. It looks at how much water has been has come into Australia or been used in Australia, who's using it, what the water quality is like, how's that changing. We also have developed continental scale models, which allow us to model soil moisture. We take the rainfall data, which the Bureau collates, we run the model at 9 a.m. each day, and by looking at the soil moisture from the previous day, the antecedent conditions, we can provide information on what the soil moisture is today, what the runoff is. And we're also using this model now to be able to develop projections in terms of, given that we had this much rainfall over the past month, over the past year, what's it going to look like the next month, the next year? And we also have design rainfall information, which were developed using rainfall data collected by all organisations across Australia, which allow engineers to design structures for the 100-year event, the 50-year event. Next, please. And then we have the forecast products. And the forecast products are the ones which give us an indication of not what's going to happen today, but what's going to happen looking further out. As I said, with the flood forecasting, usually it's a matter of hours. We want to know what the flood level is going to be in an hour. What's the flood peak going to be, and when's that going to occur over the next day or so? But we also have 7-day streamflow forecast, and that allows dam operators, it allows irrigators to know how much water they're likely to receive in the next 7 days, and that informs their agricultural practices. And then we have the seasonal streamflow forecasts. The seasonal streamflow forecasts say we're moving into winter here in Australia. How much streamflow are we likely to get? How much inflow are we likely to receive to the storages? And this is used by dam operators, but also by irrigators to know, do I use my water now, or do I know that there's a high probability that there's going to be more water? And then we have a set of streamflow stations, which are our hydrologic reference stations. And these are the cream of the streamflow stations. They're the ones which haven't been impacted by development or clearing of land. And they're the ones that we use in order to do long-term trend analysis, to look at our streamflow and say, is it increasing over time, or is there a decrease over time? Next. So by being able to provide this information, we provide water managers with the information that they need to make serious decisions when they're managing water. We are able to make them decisions about supply. Do they need to augment their supply by building or enlarging dams, by building desalination plants. And something which came out of the Millennium Drought in Australia was that each capital city now has at least one desalination plant, which they can call on when the volume of water in their storages gets very low. Also, how to use aquifer storages. We look at recycling and stormwater and groundwater use. So rather than relying on surface water, what we can use instead. And also it allows us to look at whether we can use water trading to move water between different users and also between different systems. It also provides information on how water managers can manage demand by putting on restrictions. And one of the products that the Bureau provides is information on which capital cities have water restrictions in place. And also looking at whether, again, we can replace surface water with rainwater or by harvesting stormwater, whether we can improve the efficiency of water use by having water sensitive urban design, by having products, appliances which use water efficiently. And also by, how we can use the information that we're receiving to better inform people so that our customers, people who are using water, are using it more wisely. And it also provides information, by providing information on water markets, it provides information on how people are using water, where it's being traded to the most economic and the most economically viable use. Next. So what we see is that at the end of nearly 15 years after the Bureau was given the responsibility for water information, that we're now in a much better place to be able to answer those questions, which back in 2007, we weren't able to answer. We have a much better understanding of how much water is available and how it's allocated, used, lost or traded. And more importantly, through a lot of the products that the Bureau presents, this information is now available via our website and allows people to see at a one-stop shop where the water is and what's happening. Because we have these long-term periods of record, because we have the hydrologic reference stations, we're able to have a look at how stream flows are changing with our changing climate, and also how when we have droughts and when we have floods, and over the longer period of time, how people are using water differently, how they're using water from different sources. One example is the capital city of Western Australia, Perth, which over the past 40 years has seen its surface water supplies decrease. And what we see the situation is now is that about 50% of their water comes from groundwater, and about 50% of water comes from desalination water. So in response to the changing climate, to the reduction in surface water, the city of Perth has moved towards climate resilient water sources. And also, what is the water availability outlook? By being able to look at the seasonal outlooks, which are coupled with the Bureau's seasonal climate outlooks, we can say what's happening with what the projection is for the next season. We're also working with the climate change models that are being developed both in Australia and internationally, and coupling those with our hydrologic models, our continental scale models, to be able to provide hydrologic projections so that we know if we have this impact of climate change, this is what the projection is for the change in water availability. Next. So what we see is that Australia, like many countries around the world, has a very highly variable rainfall and stream flow. And this makes it exceptionally difficult to manage our water resources. And this is only going to get worse as the impacts of climate change become more and more evident and are impacting on our water resources. At the moment, Australia is in a La Nina event, which means we are getting these massive floods that you would have seen on the news. But it's only a couple of years ago where we were in the middle of a drought, where we saw storages fall to their lowest levels, where we saw all cities having to depend on their desalination plants, where we saw irrigation not being able to receive an allocation. In order to manage these, not only the highly variable climate, which is naturally highly variable in Australia, but is exacerbated by the climate change, we need these high quality, consistent water data that is provided to the Bureau, in which the Bureau then extracts insight and information from in order to produce products and reports, which shows how we're using the water and where we can have efficiencies. But we do need to realise that as valuable as data, both now and historic is, we can't just rely on historic records for managing water resources. We also need to consider climate and hydrologic change projections. Thanks, Karen. Take some questions.
Thank you, Janice. Really very interesting presentation you gave, and also nice overview of water data collection program in Australia and what we can do with the data. And data are really the fuel for the water management. So if we have right sort of data over different landscapes, we have a better chance. So, and we have about 5 minutes for any questions from the audience. Anyone has a question, please either raise your hand or put right in the chat box. Maybe while we're waiting, could I ask you, Janice, just to give your comments? So what has been working well with the water informatics in Australia, and how it has helped in better management of water?
I think one of what's worked really well is the fact that it was a legislated Water Act, which required organisations to provide their data to the Bureau of Meteorology. While it would be nice to think that we could have done it without the Act, that people would have done it collaboratively, we did work very much on a collaborative basis with the different organisations. Having the federal government, the Commonwealth government legislate that there needed to be a single central national water information agency makes an enormous difference.
Thank you, Janice. Maybe I can ask another question. What do you see the role of water informatics for future water management in Australia? How it is going to be developing?
I think there's a number of ways in terms of water informatics. We're looking at how we can, at the moment, we have a water data transfer format, which is how the big agencies provide the information to the Bureau of Meteorology. But there are a lot of organisations who have data provided in spreadsheets or other electronic formats. So one of the big changes the Bureau is looking at over the next 5 to 10 years is being able to collect those data that are just collected in spreadsheets. We're also looking at the moment, the data are provided to different Commonwealth agencies by different state agencies, the same sets of data. So we're looking at centralizing it. So, and the use of APIs makes this far more tenable, that rather than having the New South Wales government provide information to the Bureau and then to other organisations, that we have more a central warehouse and a single way of, a single data hub where we receive the information, but then others can access the information just as easily.
Thank you, Janice. We have a question in the chat box from Roger Packham, and he's asking, how is the reliability of data ensured?
Roger, are you talking about the reliability or the accuracy?
Roger, could you switch on your microphone?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, I guess the accuracy is the key thing, isn't it?
Yeah, the reliability, there are, within the Water Act, there is a requirement that organisations provide information at in particular timeframes. In terms of the accuracy, the short answer is we assume that each organisation is doing its own quality controlling of the data, but it's fair to say that there's not, there aren't consistent standard ways of quality controlling the data. So the data are provided firstly as preliminary data, which we then do some checks on, and then it's provided as final data, which is what's provided to customers via Water Data Online. The short answer, though, I think, or maybe it's the longer answer, is there's still a long way to go in terms of quality controlling data and quality controlling it in a consistent fashion.
Oh, thank you.
I think there is a question from Rakesh Kashyapji. Please say your question.
First of all, I must compliment Bureau of Meteorology Australia who have taken a long path to reach to this level, and basically they are doing wonders now for the Australia as far as water informatics is concerned. So my specific question is regarding this seasonal forecast. What is the lead time for this seasonal forecast, and what is the in general on average accuracy of this seasonal forecast? This is my first query. And secondly, I know that inundation forecast is also being done. For that, whether the digital terrain model is available for the entire flood-prone areas in Australia, or with the high resolution and high vertical accuracy, or still it is in the process of acquisition?
Okay, thanks. The lead time is we provide 3-month seasonal streamflow forecasts, and it's on a moving way. So where the June ones would have been provided for September, and then they will be updated each month. So it's a 3-month lead time. In terms of the accuracy varies on location, it varies on season, and it also varies depending on the accuracy of the climate, the seasonal climate models that we're using. In general, autumn is the least accurate, and summer and winter tend to be the more accurate. With each seasonal streamflow forecast for each of the approximately 300 locations where we provide these seasonal streamflow outlooks, we also provide an indication of the accuracy of the particular location and season. And in terms of using the DTMs for flood inundation mapping, that's something the Bureau doesn't do itself, and it tends to be done more at a state level or a local council level.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Janice. Is there any other question? I just want to ask a very quick question to you, Janice. what do you see the role of crowdsourcing or citizen science in water data collection?
I would say that any data is valuable. When we were revising the design rainfalls, where we used 30,000 daily read stations, we used about 2,500 continuous rainfall stations, so your tipping bucket rain gauges. We also looked at information that people collected and provided to the Bureau. So people ring the Bureau and say, I have a rain gauge in my back garden. It recorded this. What we found it very useful as tertiary data sources. So it's saying, there was a very big rainfall event. There may not have been a gauge, a Bureau gauge or another organisation gauge in the area. But if we can have an indicative indication of how much rain fell, that's valuable information. And the same with other types of information that, as you're aware, in Australia, there's CSIRO runs a quite successful citizen science in looking at water quality, where they just compare it to a colour chart to be able to say what the water quality status of a particular stream is. So I would say that any data are valuable, but with citizen science and with citizen science data, it can be used as tertiary information, if not better.
Thank you, Janice, and I agree. I think it's a great way to enhance the water literacy and the engagement. So
absolutely, yeah.
So over to you, Karen. Thank you so much, Janice. Really enjoyed the presentation. Very informative.
Thanks, Basant. And yes, thank you, Janice. That was a great presentation. I'd like to introduce now our second presenter, which is Dr. Anil Kumar Lohani. He's a scientist G and head of surface water hydrology and head of the Centre for Flood Management Studies at the National Institute of Hydrology in Roorkee. He's also coordinator at the Centre for Flood Management Studies at NIH Guwahati and coordinator for Central India Hydrology in Bhopal and training coordinator for the National Hydrology Project. And on top of all of that, he's also a member of the Indo-Australia Joint Working Group convened by the governments of India and Australia to work on water resources management issue. So Dr. Lohani, we look forward to hearing from you. I invite you to take your microphone off mute. You've got your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, good morning to everybody. I'll be talking about the hydroinformatics in India. That is what was in the past and the present and the future of the hydroinformatics. So as Janice, she has mentioned that about the hydrological data. So I'll not go in detail about the hydrological data. So in our country, I'll talk about what was the situation earlier in the, particularly in case of the hydrological data, how we are managing the data, how we were basically processing the data. So just I'll give you some glimpse about those things. So if you can see before 1995, before 1995 I mentioned because from 95 onwards we have got the first hydrology project, that is the phase 1. And the basic aim of that project was to just transform the data what we were having in the form of the registers. So that was the basic idea with the hydrology project phase 1. So prior to 1995, this was the condition of our data. So yes, you can see all the data were just lying in these forms, and you just see it was not easy to process all these kinds of the data, hydrological data. These were in the register forms. Okay. So this is the actual condition of the hydrological data. This is a very precious data, and we do spend a lot of money for collection of these kinds of the data, and they do require for the operation and management of the water resources project as well as for the future water resources planning. So now, as you know that specifically when we talk about the hydrological data or any kinds of the data, a systematic processor is very much required, as we see in the libraries. if the books are unsystematic, it is very difficult to get a particular book or the particular reference out of that. A systematic library, a systematic collection of the books or the data. So similarly, in case of the data also, if we have a proper systematic method for putting the data, storing the data, so that will be much more easier to utilize the data for a proper purpose. Now here, once we talk about the hydrological data, as Janice, she has mentioned that, so we do require that hydrological data for different purposes. And according to the purpose of the hydrological data, we have the different spatial scale and the temporal scale. So for the, if we talk about the flash flood, we do require the data for sub daily scale of the data, means maybe the hourly data or the minute data, like that. But if we are going for the different kinds of analysis like the drought, reservoir operation, so we do require both our temporal and spatial skills are high. So accordingly, we have to see our hydrological network. We have to plan our hydrological network considering both spatial and temporal scale and the frequency of the data, how we do measure the data. So now after 1995, so we got the first project of the National Hydrology project. We got the Hydrology project phase 1, that was from 1995 to 2003. So the basic aim of this hydrology project to develop a good hydrological information system, as well as the basically the whole idea of the hydrological information system. So we do have a proper recording of the data, then a standard procedure, so that all the implementing agency, they should have the same procedure for the recording of the data. So a standardization of the data collection system, that was the one part. Then once the data is collected, then another part is the validation of the data. Whether the data which we have collected is properly validated or not. Then the processing of data, then finally storage of data in the hydrological information system, so that we can disseminate this data to the various users. So with this aim, we started our journey in Hydrology project phase 1. So as I mentioned, so we have to have a proper comprehensive database that should be easily accessible, should be reliable, user-friendly, and sustainable. So that, with that aim, we started our journey. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have to have proper standardization of the procedure to be followed at various levels of the system. So that those standard procedures have been developed during that time, and these were implemented with the different water resource data collection agencies. So during the Hydrology project phase 1, we started with the 2 new softwares for the data entry into the computer. These were the surface water data entry system and the groundwater data entry system. So all the data which were lying in the form of the registers in the offices, so these have been converted or transferred to the computer systems through the surface water data entry system and the groundwater data entry system. Okay, so these basically these 2 software were the data entry and editing softwares. Then these data were further processed. The surface water was processed using the system as HIMOS. So HIMOS was the one of the system which was used for the processing of the surface water data. Similarly, another software was developed, is a GEM used for the groundwater data processing. So these data were basically for the data correction, compilation, validation, and the analysis purpose. And then the important thing comes to disseminate the data to the users. So for that, another software was developed, that was a hydrological data storage software, Wisdom, that is Water Information System Data Online Management System. So that was also there during the Hydrology project phase 1. So these are the some of the screenshots of the softwares, like the dedicated data entry system SWDS was developed. So one can carry out various analysis. So it's still some of the states are parallelly using this software for the data entry into the computer. They are still using. So data, another was the groundwater data entry system. So this was basically dedicated for the entry of the all kinds of the groundwater data into the system. Then the HIMOS software was used for the processing of the surface water data. So this is the screen of the HIMOS. Then, as I mentioned, that Wisdom software was developed to disseminate the data so that the user can directly access the system. He can select the period of the data and just order for the specific data sets. Now, in the Hydrology project phase 1, so 9 states were there in the Hydrology project phase 1. So this system was not applied to all the states in the country. So only 9 peninsular states of the country and the 6 central agencies were involved in the data entry, processing, and the collection of these systems. Further, you just see during the hydrology project phase 1, so some of the facilities were created, like the river gauging station were there, then the observational wells, hydrometeorological station, data centers were created, then the data storage centers were created. So likewise, these are the facilities were created during the hydrology project phase 1. Then, as I mentioned, that number of softwares were developed for the data processing and other things. Then one of the important thing was that the protocol was developed to how to store the data, when to store the data. So various timelines were decided that the data, whatever we are collecting from the field, is to be stored into the computer for the further processing. So these are the protocols that have been developed during that time. So these are the guidelines and other things. So now the data exchange system was developed, how to exchange the data from the state to the central agencies, carry out the processing of the data, okay, and then disseminate the data. Now, after the successful implementation of the hydrology project phase 1, especially, so there were some more other tasks were there, but as I mentioned, that the important task was that data collection, processing, and the analysis. Then 2006 to 2014, the second phase of the hydrology project has come up. So during that phase, some of the software, so it was thought that the data which were collected using entered into the computer using the previous softwares like SWDS, surface water data entry system, or the groundwater data entry system, those softwares were the desktop-based softwares. So with the improvement in the internet facilities and other things, it was thought, why not we should have some online system for the data entry processing. So eSwiss was developed during that time. So this was basically for the online data entry system. Now, another software was also developed parallelly by the Central Water Commission. That time was the India Water system. So basically, this India Water system contains all spatial data as well as the temporal data of whole country. So one can just download various kinds of data from this software. Okay, this is also one of the online software. So as I mentioned that during the hydrology project phase 1, prior to that, the data was all in the form of the raster. So after that, during the phase 1, those softwares are developed. So parallelly, hydrological data storage centers were also developed. So these are some of the glimpses about how the data is being processed in using the desktop computers. Then at the same time, what were the conventional gauges were there, they were also upgraded, and some modern gauges like the automatic gauges, and those were installed. So likewise, various instruments and other things were installed at the various places. Similarly, the water quality laboratories have been developed in various state and central agencies. So with that, if you see, the objective of this hydrology project phase 2 was to extend and promote the use of the hydrological information system. What were the hydrological information we were having, to use that one. So parallelly, some of the hydrological modeling and the hydrological studies have been carried out during that time to utilize the data being collected through these hydrology projects and other agencies. Okay, so here basically the coverage of this hydrology project phase 2 was for the 13 states and the 8 central agencies. As I mentioned that during the phase 1, only 9 states were there, and during the phase 2, 4 more states have entered into the hydrology project, and the 13 states came into the hydrology project phase 2. Still, the whole country was not covered into the hydrology project phase 2. So, one of the great achievement during the hydrology project phase 2 was from desktop database management, we have shifted to the web-based data management system in the hydrology project phase 2. So that was, other than there were so many other things were there. So we have also developed during that time a decision support system for the planning of water resources project. So some of these achievements were there. Now, parallelly, some of the data centers were created, like the state data centers, divisional data center, sub-divisional data center. Okay, these were created in different states. So these are some new states that joined during the hydrology project phase 2. These are the Himachal Pradesh, Pondicherry, and Goa. Okay, then the strengthening of the hydrometeorological stations. So some manual FCS, rain gauges, and SRRG, basically they have increased. Then the digital rain gauge and the AWS without telemetry, these are also installed in different stations. Then the automatic weather station, then the digital rain gauges. So with the telemetry facilities. So now some of the data we started getting online in the form of the telemetry. Similarly, hydrological stations were improved. Some ADCPs like current meters, okay. All those things were installed. Automatic rain gauges, gauge sites, okay. And further, the groundwater DWLR were installed at various places. So these are the improvement in the both in the data collection, then the data processing and the data storage. So these are the improvement were taking place. Similarly, apart from the hydrological and hydrometeorological data, water quality data was also strengthened during that time. Okay, so some of the real-time water quality stations were installed. They started working. Okay, by the CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board, and the Central Water Commission. So various laboratories of the level 1, 2, and 2+ were developed during that time. Now, in this hydrology project phase 2, the main important thing, as I mentioned, that eSWIS was developed. That was the data entry, storage, and dissemination software was there. Then for the groundwater, eGEMS was developed for the groundwater estimation and the management system. So these were the online softwares for the data entry. So the state people can directly online enter data online form. And for water quality, GIS-based water quality portal was developed. And finally, these data were available through the MOWR India Waris software, Ministry of Water Resources, or now it's Ministry of Jal Shakti. So India Waris software, these data were available. So this is basically, if you see from this picture, these are the different phases of the hydrology. So there are, right now, there are 3 phases of the hydrology project. First one was from 1995 to 2003. The second phase are from 2006 to 2014. Then from 2015 to 2023, it's a third phase. As this during the third phase, all the states are being covered mostly. So we call it as a national hydrology project instead of the hydrology project phase 3. Instead of that, we mentioned it as a national hydrology project. Now it's cover almost all the nation, all the states of the country and the unit territories. Now, during the hydrology project, national hydrology project, one of the important tasks, utilizing the data what we are collecting, managing, processing, is to utilize the data for the real use. So we have developed one decision support system for the planning and management of the water resources. So now this decision support system have different modules like the knowledge base, surface water and groundwater planning, flood management assessment, drought assessment, reservoir optimization, and the water quality. So one can utilize this one. So it has different databases like the rainfall data, which has been collected by the India Meteorological Department. Then apart from that, we have connections with the open source satellite rainfall data. So directly one can download these data. He can carry out various processing of the hydrological data online. Okay, so all the implementing agency of the National Hydrology Project, they can utilize this software. They can carry out a number of processing online through the internet, using the internet, using this DSSPM software. So all these things one can carry out. So now another part of this one is the water resources planning. So one can develop a water resources planning model and just upload into the decision support system planning and management, and a planner or the higher officer, he can simply use this tool, this decision support system tool, and just develop different scenarios. He can just add new users. He can change the cropping pattern. He can change the inflow values and see what is the scenario of a particular, and then he can take decision on the basis of that. So this is the one of the best use of the decision support system for the water resources planning purpose. So you can see how much water we do have in our basin, in our place, and how many users are there, what are the demands of the users. If you are going to change some demands, so what will the impact of that on the total water availability and the water demand. So how we can utilize this water in a best manner. So one can use that one. Then another important part, it has a capability to just assess the drought. So using the rainfall data, right now we have linked the software with the satellite database. So automatically it just calculates, assesses the droughts with the SPI values and compute that one. Then we do have in our country one drought manual. So it tells that how to declare the drought. So considering all those aspects, all those conditions, we have also considered in our decision support system planning and management. So it can also tell about the drought, whether drought initiated or not. So all those things can be just computed from the decision support system planning, and it can give the values at the block levels, also district and block levels you can get. Then, as I mentioned that, one more thing I'll just mention here, in the decision support system, we do have a linkage with the flood management. So in the flood management specifically, you can compute how much flood is there in the downstream side, in the basically below the reservoir or below a particular site. So if you can see a particular return period flood is coming over there, how much area is going to be inundated. So you can have flood plain zoning part of the things, like if 100 years return period flood is coming, so how much area is going to be inundated. If 200 or the 500 year return period flood is coming, then how much area is going to be inundated. So likewise, you can have from this decision support system planning and management, you can just manage the floods. You can just give the advisory to the downstream side that if this much flood is coming, so this much area is going to be inundated. So all those plans one can just have. So just having certain models, developing those things. So if you are utilizing in the decision support system, higher officials can directly see all those scenarios on their online through the decision support system planning and management. So these are the some of the benefits of. Similarly, it has the water quality modules also. So a number of modules are there, so one can utilize these things. So as I mentioned that specifically in the National Hydrology project, another important thing about the hydroinformatics, as we know. So as our journey started from the manual data to the converting it to the desktop to the online data system. So now in the third phase, the NHP, we have the National Water Information System, which has a system like Water Information Management System. So any state or any implementing agency, they can directly put their data into the Water Information System. They can create their own stations and put all those information in the. So this all the data goes into the WIMS. Okay, and this data can be now available in the eWater system. So eWater system basically manages all kinds of the data, and through this eWater system, all the spatial and the temporal data can be accessed and downloaded, except for the some classified basins like the Ganga and Brahmaputra. One can easily download. So here the important thing is the most of the researchers, they are utilizing this data for their research purpose, are they either for the MTech or the PhD purposes, or they can simply with some email IDs and other things, they can download the data over there. Then another important part, what is planned in the National Hydrology project is the integrated water and crop information and management system. So that is all, that will also be an important part of this NWIC. So in future, we'll be able to just give the information of the crop information and the management system. It can tell us about the planning of the water in a good manner. The another information, another system is the SWIC, that is the State Water Informatics System. So all the states, they can manage their data through the SWIC, and then they can link it with the eWater and provide all those information data to the different users. So this is the journey of the hydroinformatics in our country from, as I mentioned, from 1995. Just or prior to that, we were having simply manual data collection system. All the manual things were there. We are putting in the register, and from there our journey started. We in 2003 we went to the computerization of all the data processing of the primary and secondary processing of all the data, and part of that dissemination through the online system. Then in 2014, our journey has further improved, and we went on the online entry of the data, management of the data, processing of the data, all those things, and the dissemination of the data. And from 2000 up to and after 2014, right now or in future, we'll be having all the data in the online system, processing of the data online, transferring the data online. And this is not for the some of the state, but for the whole country, we'll be having that thing. Then further, we are utilizing this data in decision support system planning and management. We do have certain Google Earth Engine models. There we have developed number of models like National Hydrology model and other models. So these data are being utilized for the management, proper management of the water resources in our country. So that's all this I wanted to tell you about the history of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lohani. Excellent presentation. And also I like the illustrations and photographs you included in the presentation. It really made very interesting. And also I can see how important the NHP National Hydrology project has been when you showed the photographs of the data storage in bundles, I think, and you converted them into digital thing. I think that's where you are making a difference to water.
Actually, sir, here just I'll mention that actually I am involved in the hydrology project from since beginning. So during the beginning days, we were going to the different states, and I found the status of data like that. So we have taken some pictures of those things so that we can tell that how we have improved from that time to right now.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how you have done all this and brought to all the digital information system.
Yes.
So the forum is open. So we have about 5 minutes for questions, which Dr. Lohani will be happy to respond. Yeah. So please either raise your hand or put in the chat box. So Dr. Dharma Hagare.
Dr. Lohani, thanks so much for an excellent presentation. It was really very refreshing to see how the data collection and archiving and accessibility has been improved in India. A couple of questions I have. One is accessibility. You were saying that the data is available for all the government departments. What about private organization and the public? Can they access the data? How they can access, and also how the quality of the data which is entered is ensured. Thanks very much.
Okay. So as far as the data is concerned, as I mentioned that most of the data is accessible through the eWater software. Okay, one can just log into the eWater software, and as I mentioned that specifically for the Ganga and Brahmaputra, data is not shared with one can get only the metadata about those things. So metadata of whole country is available, but specifically for the time series data, if you want to get, so you can get the data apart from the Brahmaputra and Ganga, one can get all the data through eWater software. Okay, and as far as the quality of the data is concerned, normally the data is being processed and quality is being checked before entering the data into the system. So right now I can say that most of the data is correct in the nature, quality is good, and one can utilize this data.
Thank you, Dr. Lohani. Any other comment or question from the group?
Yes, could I ask a question, Basant?
Sure.
I'm wondering, how does the data get down to ordinary farmers so that they can actually get increased crop yields?
So, Dr. Lohani, the question is, how can ordinary farmers can get access to data and make better decision or help them to do better water management?
So it's a good question. Actually, right now in our country, farmers are not utilizing this data. Okay, but still under hydrology project, this national hydrology project, some of the purpose-driven studies are being taken up. So in those purpose-driven studies, our various PIs, they are developing some mobile apps. Through those mobile apps, specifically they can utilize this data. So those mobile apps tells them about the information about the rainfall, how much rainfall will be there, forecast of those rainfall. Then further about the some places there are canal irrigation is there. So how much water is being released to the canal. So all those kinds of the information can be accessed through the mobile apps. So we are trying to develop these mobile apps, and those will be useful. So directly this India virus data may be useful mostly for the academicians, by the water resources planners, or not directly by the farmers right now.
Thank you, Dr. Lohani. I want to ask a similar question I asked to Janice. Do you see the role of citizen science, people collecting data, because this can be really a good way, very cost effective, and how people, ordinary people, can contribute to the data in National Hydrology Project? So do you see the role of ordinary people, citizen science, crowdsourcing of data? Dr. Lohani, are you able to hear?
Can I say something?
Yes, sir. Hello, sir, please.
Just a minute.
Can you repeat, sir?
So what I'm saying is, I asked similar question to Janice. Do you see role of citizen science in data collection, which can contribute to the National Hydrology Project?
Yes, that will be useful, definitely, in the National Hydrology Project. Here, specifically in our country, you just see, we have both the parallel system. One is the manual data collection, as well as the some auto stations we are utilizing, and some of the places where we do not have proper internet access and other things, we go there, we take the data manually. Like if I mention here, like our team is going to the Gangotri glaciers. Okay, there we don't have any access for the mobile network, or we cannot transfer the data through the telemetry. So manual things are also there. So parallelly, we do utilize both manual as well as the telemetry, or the these kinds of the system to transfer the data in the main system. So that is the thing. So
thank you.
Professor Maheshwari, Professor Maheshwari, if you kindly allow me, because I am dealing with National Hydrology Project.
Yes, yes.
So collaborate with what Dr. Lohani has said. So basically, we are banking upon crowdsourcing and the citizen science also. So like the data which is required for springs inventorization, and then data related to the spring water quality as well as the discharge. Then there is a demand for having assessment of water bodies, basically, which are spread more than 10 lakh water bodies which are there. So the capacity of that by water bodies. And then there are some embankment management system. There are some canal asset management system where the role of general public is there. So basically, mobile apps have been developed with geotagging facility. So now those are required to be integrated with the India Varis and our information system. And of course, in the coming period, so we'll be heavily banking upon this crowdsourcing and citizen science. This is our plan.
Thank you, Kashyapji, for explaining this. I think that's a really good plan. I think we have two more people we can probably go with. So Professor Tanu Jindal, if you could be brief and also say the question straight away.
Not audible.
Unmute, Professor.
You're muted, Professor.
Unmute.
Audio is muted, madam.
Please unmute.
Just unmute your audio.
Yeah, Dr. Anil,
Yeah.
I'm Professor Tanu Jindal from MIT. I would like to just point out about the quality initiatives and quality parameters you're taking into account, because what I believe, yes, we need to have a quantity, but that quantity is of no use if it does not have quality. And in terms of quality, there are many things, only physico-chemical parameters have been tested, while the toxicity of water is because of many persistent organic pollutants like pesticides and heavy metals. So would you like to say something about it?
Yes, as far as you mentioned that the quality, some of the water quality data are being collected. Okay, so basically most of the things in our country, CPCB is looking for that. Okay, Central Water Commission is also having some quality data. So both the Central Water Commission is mainly there covering the quantity data, but part of that they are also considering the quality of the water quality data. So we do have that, but still I say that not much data is available on the water quality. More on the quantity is available there. So most of the water quality data is being collected by the Central Pollution Control Board, CPCB. They do have that one.
Yeah, but as I would say, if you could refer to one of my project which I have done, that in case of farmers, in cotton, rice and vegetable growing area in Ghaggar, Hindon and Yamuna River, pesticides are not being analyzed, and more than 50% samples were found contaminated with pesticides. So, I would say that, a large initiative has to be taken about the awareness and the residues of these pesticides which are being sprayed by farmers. It is not only in surface water in the rivers, but it is also leaching down to the groundwater owing to the cocktail use of pesticides.
Yeah,
so I would say that if you could keep it as a big yes. Plus from the textile waste, the forward osmosis membrane system, if that can be utilized for used in agriculture purpose, that would be a great help.
Now you have rightly mentioned that we have to think about those things. So right now, specifically in India virus and other things, we don't have much information about the quality of the data. Quantity we do have. The quality, as I mentioned that although the CPCB is maintaining, so CPCB was part of this hydrology project earlier. So future also we will see that how we can have this more on the quality side also.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah, please also comment on the forward osmosis membrane systems for the purification of textile industry waste and other industry waste to be diverted for agriculture use.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Dr. Lohani. There are a couple of quick questions, so please be brief and to the point. Professor Shiv Prasad, and then we go to Dr. Bashir.
Good morning, Professor Prasad from Pantnagar University. It is just a very good presentation by Dr. Lohani, particularly on worries and other things. We are also using some of the data from them. My only query is there any data available in terms of visual as well as short clippings, that sort of thing?
Yes, sir. In terms of data?
Short clippings or snaps of that physical. Let us say some river is there.
Yeah.
Some Ganges River or Bhagirathi River, that site spots where that suppose let us say gas station is installed. Snaps is available or a small short video sort of thing, maybe natural, ecological, or in different ways. That's what my query is.
Right now, sir, it is not available. Actually, right now, what we do have, we have the data only from the state and central agencies, what they do have, but it's a good idea. So in future, we can. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So we just have the last question from Dr. Bashir. Please be brief. Yes, please go ahead, Dr. Bashir Ahmed. We can't hear you. Your microphone is off.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, we can hear you.
Is there any data regarding the Himalayan glaciers in a chronological order? If it is available, where it is available, and what about the melting of glaciers, and what is the rate of melting of glaciers? What kind of impact and what is the magnitude of impact due to climate change on the impact?
Yes. Just I'll mention here that regarding the glacier melt and other things. So right now we don't have much sites on the glacier melt in our country. Some of the sites, the various research organizations, they have their own sites, like NIH has one in Gangotri, as I mentioned, and some other places. So similarly, other organizations like they have their own sites, but these kinds of the data are not available in the India virus. Means the upper Himalayan regions data you won't get much about in this one. But another part is that Central Water Commission is also monitoring the different glacial lake through NRSC. So some reports are there, so a continuous monitoring of the glacial lakes and the glaciers are there. So those parts you can get from there, but not the actual data are not available. I mean the melt data are not there, but the some of the sites which are downstream just below the glaciers are there. So there is the impact of the both snow melt and rainfall is there. So from there, runoff series are available. But as I mentioned further, that most of these areas are either in the Brahmaputra or Ganga river basin. So these are the restricted areas. So directly you won't get the download the data. You're there.
Thank you, Dr. Lohani. We'll come back to Dr. Ravita's question later in the panel discussion.
Okay, sure.
Please hold on to your question. Dr. Lohani will be there to answer. So thank you. And I think it has been really good presentation by looking at the people's comments. And so you've done very well. Thank you. And I'll now hand over to Karen.
Thank you very much from me as well, Dr. Lohani. It was a really, really interesting presentation and the questions were also interesting. We're moving into our breakout room discussion. So it's your turn now to contribute to the agenda today. You're going to be automatically invited to or allocated to a breakout room, and you just need to accept the invitation that will appear shortly on your screen. So we're really keen for you to accept the invitation and participate in the discussion there, because we're really keen to hear from you. So breakout rooms are going to be looking at 2 questions. The first question is about the key challenges, but also the opportunities for water informatics over the next 5 to 10 years. So what are the priorities for research, training and capacity building? And then the second question is how we initiate and sustain significant collaboration between Australia and India in water informatics. And, we hope this will be a broad discussion for you. So they're the 2 questions. And they'll be, you'll be able to refer to those questions when you're in the room. So please click the join button in your room. If you're not in room 1, you may need to scroll down the side of the pop-up there to find your name in room 2, 3 or 4. So please scroll down and click the join button. So we'll see you back here in about 25 minutes.
Also, what can Australia and India learn from each other? There are some things done well in India, some things done here in Australia well. Where are the common points where both countries can benefit?
So any thought on that one?
So just I'll mention here. As far as one of the important part on the National Hydrology Project, ongoing National Hydrology Project, we do have a capacity building and training of the implementing agencies, officers of the implementing agencies. So number of training programs are being organized by National Institute of Hydrology and other organizations. So we do organize a number of training programs, but still we do feel that a joint program, if we have some program with the Australia academic institutes or the Water Resources Department like those, and we can plan some training program like that, and some training program maybe directly by the your country, you can have some program. So those may be much more useful, because we can go some advanced type of the things what we still don't have in our country. We are not practicing those things, so we can look forward for those things. And with the joint program, even wherever we feel that some improvements are required, so those kinds of things we can have. And some of the success stories what we do have may be useful for you also, what we have carried out in our country with those conditions and other things. So some means the 2 part, one is the pure training program from the your side, and another one is the exchange program, and then some joint programs we can have all those things. We have Srivasalulu, our training coordinator of NPMU, TMC is the consultants in that one, so he can give more highlight about those things. So one can plan in those way.
Any specific things that you think could be taken from Australia, like like any strength? I mean, to sort of how can I say, to elaborate a little bit.
Like okay, so like if you see in but I've seen that some of the good programs are being organized in your country, like the on hack softwares. A number of programs are being organized. I have seen are there. Then even for the water resources planning also we can have programs of means one is the flood side, the flood forecasting side. We can have some programs over there. Okay, flood forecasting and flood management. Then water resources planning, we can have certain programs over there. So these are some things I do have in my ideas, so we can plan for that.
Okay. Any other thought from Sudeep from Australian perspective?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your perspective, Dr.
Thanks.
And, yeah, it was nice talking here about water informatics. So I started working with the eWater for the last year, and yeah, currently like we developed software like Source for the water system planning and catchment modeling, and then music for urban water management, etc. So so just I was thinking, like, we are like, we give training, like we use advanced science and innovative approaches to develop hydrological models and even data visualization. So I see that after in Australia, so many people, the next most people using the Source, especially Source, is from India. So yeah, adding to Dr. Lohani's comment that we can give trainings on that if people want, and then we can learn from India as well, like in what they're happening in India as well, especially in data visualization, how these the hydrological data and okay, so we have the stream flow data, water level data, discharge data, and all. How can we display it so that even the public can see, okay, so this is what is happening, whether at what point, at what station, whether there is any flood forecast or any like what is the discharge there, is there any warning, all those things. Like at eWater, we have been reviewing various dashboards and web-based tools, like for a near real-time usage, displaying of stream flow data, etc., so that it will not only benefit the researchers and hydrologists, but even the local people, because we have been working on such a project for Mekong River Commission, MRC. So just thinking, like, we can why can't we participate and collaborate with Indian authorities or Indian researchers on such on such things? Yeah, so yes, so that's my high level thought about this.
Thank you.
I just want to add to Sudeep what he said. How can we, in terms of opportunities, how can we take water data and the water science to ordinary people and have their role in data collection? I think so. From our experience in Marvi project, the rainfall, say we were working in a watershed, 5 villages, only 3-4 kilometers away. And the rainfall was so different, the total rainfall at the end of monsoon season. One had a 380 millimeters, another had 560, and like that.
Yeah.
Although there were only a few kilometers and the crop failed in one village and crop was successful in another village. So what it pointed out to us was we need, say, for example, rainfall data for every village in India. And we got 600,000, 6 lakh villages. And I think it is possible if we engage local people to monitor, train them. And that can create a very important water informatics.
Yeah, I think, yeah, so very good point there. I mean, yeah, because we need more network, but there should be some incentives to the local people as well. So to ensure the quality, not just give some anyway data. So that's what my thought as well. So there should be some incentives to them as well. Yeah, so.
Yeah, thank you. I think we will have to think about, I think, thank you very much, Basant. I think your the input is important. I know that we are just coming to real discussion, but I have to move into the next one. Otherwise, we will not be keeping up with the time. So how do we, the next question is, how do we initiate and sustain significant collaboration between Australia and India for research, training, and capacity? Again, the same thing, but in a different focus. Regard to the engagement with researchers, NGOs, and public and private sector. I think probably Basant's comment actually lead to that one, how we can connect with the public. And so now it is about NGOs and private sector, and then how we can keep this capacity building and the collaboration going forward. Any thought on? Yes, yes,
Dr. Lohani mentioned in the beginning of this breakout rooms. So joint training program, I think that's one he mentioned.
Yeah.
Exchange program, joint research collaboration. So I think we need to start from somewhere. And if, say, some joint training program where some experienced people from both countries run a program, and that can really start to something bigger later on.
Yeah, I think I think I hear a lot about the agricultural sector. I think I understand that it is important because it's a major use of water, but I mean, urban water quality and then water things are not mentioned too much. They are mentioned in Australian presentation, but I didn't see much in Indian presentation. I'm not sure whether that is a gap or that is already there, but you are not working on it, or what's that?
Just I'll mention here, we are working on that. Actually, here in our country, we are from the Ministry of Jal Shakti. So our Ministry of Jal Shakti, most of the things on the quantity side we are working, a little bit about the quality we are working. The quality means most of the things about the sediment and the things we do measure. Means, but we have another organization, like as I mentioned, that the Central Pollution Control Board. Okay. That is in another ministry. So they are looking after the quality of the water. And then as you mentioned about the agriculture, so we do have another ministry, agriculture ministry. So they are looking for all the water about the agriculture. So our main thrust here, specifically in the Ministry of Jal Shakti, though we plan for that, but the further planning is going in those ministries in detail. So we do consider mostly on the quantity side, we do consider over here. So that's why in my presentation, those things were not much covered.
Thank you.
Just adding to Dr. Lohani and the question from Sathaa, the government of India has a mission for water to every home.
Yeah.
And drinking water.
Drinking water.
And yes, so how water informatics can be used to help that mission? I think that will be my opportunity question for future.
That's an interesting question. So any thought from other people here? I think
water quality is a big issue in drinking water quality with the selenium, uranium, and so many other fluoride problem. And people really need clean water, clean air, clean food. And water is the sort of center.
Yeah. And then they were also talking about some pesticides and things like that in the in the water, which eventually get into the rice and other things. So I think we are hearing from most people. Dr. Siva, or could you please give us your comment?
Yeah, there are. I am also accompanied by our research students. I think some of them, they are expressing their views. I think I request please introduce and then express.
Sir, I am Ravneet Singh, research scholar in Packham University. This is a good training or webinar on this water informatics. So, as a research scholar, I would in future also like to see these webinars. And I'm concerned about the data collection and these real-time data should also be more made available to research scholars so they can also participate or give their views on these water informatics things.
Thank you. Very good question.
Thank you. Any comment on it, or any comment?
Is it for Indian? They are talking mainly for Indian data, right? It's Indian hydrological data. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what he means.
Yeah.
What I think, what I understood from his words is, even like citizen science, Professor Basant was talking, even research scholars and others should also be included, particularly PhD and MTech research scholars, for let us say collection of the data or ground truth, etc., or development of some softwares. That sort of thing.
So I think what you're saying, Professor Shiva Prasad, is there are some other secondary data which may be useful if some way to include in the National Hydrology Project. People are collecting everywhere, research scholars, PhD scholars, and how that information can be brought into as a side, maybe not primary, but some tertiary data.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So it increases the breadth of data available.
Yes.
Nothing is available. This is available.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other thought on?
Dr. Srinivas Loji has some
his mic is not. Yeah, I think I have already taken that one. I have taken that one to summarize it.
Okay.
So
I think it's a very good, important point. That's good.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, so yeah, like we are talking about the second question is a collaboration. How can collaboration can increase? So yeah, like I say, so we are open to like we do community practice as well, like in eWater. Right? I mean, as such, we don't collect primary data or anything. We just develop softwares and give trainings to people who use it. Various councils in Australia and all. So even students participate in it. Australian students who use them. So we had one student from IIT Kharagpur, who was a collaborative, who was in a collaborative project with Melbourne University as well. So she was using Source for her project in Bangalore, which was a case study in Bangalore, based on Bangalore. So yeah, so open to some kind of those kind of trainings. So in terms of collaborations, yeah, just wanted to add that point.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
In terms
we
of
are nearing, we have 1 minute, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
In terms of the collaboration, I think in near future there will be some seed grants available through Australia India Institute, and that could be an opportunity for starting off the collaboration in a small way.
Okay, thank you. I think if I just summarize what we have discussed so far, is I think we were looking at ensuring the quality of the data, how we can ensure the quality of the data probably can be learned from Australia or vice versa. And then there are areas like flood forecasting, water resource planning, and then data visualization part, and can be learned from either way between the party if one of them is strong. And for example, flood forecasting may be strong in Australia, maybe that can be exchanged, and then I mean the Indian collaborators can learn from that one. Then we were talking about exchange program and joint programs as a possible opportunity, and then Basant raised the issue about the water for clean water for everybody, and then I think they already said another 57 seconds. So I mean, how the data can reach the ordinary people, and that's one thing. The second thing is about how this water quality and then water quantity can be mapped so that the water for everybody for drinking purposes can be ensured. I think those are the points that we have discussed. I suppose.
And also, Sathaa, just to add to what you said, what role in water informatics can play in helping that mission?
Ah, yes. Yeah.
Because if there is a good data available at state level, district level, I think there can be a better planning and policy.
Yes. Yes, and then yes, thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name's Roger Packham. I'm an associate professor at the University of Western Sydney. I've been involved for many years in projects in India and was a founding member of the MAVI project in Rajasthan and Gujarat. Could I ask everyone, if possible, to switch on your videos so we can see you? We're only a small group. I'd like to go round and have each of you introduce yourselves in turn, just very briefly like I did. So let's move to you, Debbie.
My name's Debbie Atkins. I'm working with Western Sydney University. I'm the project officer with Australia-India Water Centre. And Roger was my lecturer when I studied agriculture in Hawkesbury 30 years ago. So it's nice to be working with him again.
Thank you, Debbie. Hamish, could you introduce yourself? Mahesh, sorry, Mahesh?
Yeah.
My eyesight is bad, so the writing's slow. Sorry, Mahesh.
It's okay. It's Manish, and good afternoon to all, and good morning to my Indian partners. I am Manish Nema. I'm working as a scientist at the National Institute of Hydrology, Roorkee, and I'm basically working on the hydrological modeling, as well as I'm also doing one of my projects on the experimental hydrology, wherein we have developed a experimental catchment with the installation of the advanced instruments, for example, the AWS's automatic water level recorders, the eddy covariance flux tower, and so on. So that's me.
Thank you very much. On to Tim Westwood.
Great. Thanks, Roger. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim. I work for the Australian Bureau of Agricultural Resources and Economics and Sciences. So that's a part of the Department of Agriculture. My work is focused on the Southern Murray-Darling Basin here in Australia, and I'm an economist, so we're looking at the water market. So that's like water prices, the trade flows of water between the Southern Murray-Darling Basin, and kind of the implications that that arise from various policy decisions that happen surrounding the Southern Murray-Darling Basin, and then what that means for irrigators and for policymakers. Thanks.
Thank you. Prachi Gupta.
Hello, good afternoon from Australia and good morning from India. Myself, Prachi Gupta, working as a scientist in Center of Breakout. Recently, I am engaged in the National Aquifer Program of Indian government, and this is the compilation of aquifer work is going on in this project. And I am also selected as a young water professional under the India-Australia Water Partnership Program. And I am also engaged in the Jal Shakti mission of the Government of India. Recently, it is going on from last 3 years.
Thank you. Now, Nadi Kalyani.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Nidhi. So I'm working at National Institute of Hydrology and working here as Scientist B in Groundwater Hydrology Division. So, yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
all.
Thank you. Penny Barn.
Yep. I work for the Water Division in Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment. Well, until the end of this month when we become our own department again. Stop laughing, Tim. I work in an area for science, policy and coordination. We look at and develop and manage projects, and particularly involved in research. And I'm here learning as much as anything, observing and trying to get my head around what's an incredibly complex subject.
Wonderful, that's what we're all doing. Now, my final task is to ask someone to make some notes of our discussion and be prepared to report back after this to the wider group. Would anyone care to volunteer for that? Don't have any volunteers. Sorry?
Can you please repeat that?
Yes, you'll do it, will you? Is that?
I just said if you could repeat that.
Yes. So you'll take the notes and report for us?
I will take care of it. Roger. Manish here.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we have two questions. The first one is, what are the key challenges and opportunities related to water information in research, training and capacity building for Australia and India for the next 5 to 10 years? Okay, so we've heard some very good presentations. I'm sure there's questions coming out of that about the challenges. Would anyone like to go first on that? So research, training, and cooperation. Yeah. Anyone like to make an input there?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first.
Thank you.
Especially on the challenges of the research side of things, that's kind of where I'm coming out from. We've heard a lot of the presentations today talking about the challenges of getting the data and the challenges of getting consistent data, and that is not going away anytime soon. That's always going to be a challenge, and especially for researchers, the accuracy and the how comprehensive that data is always going to be of paramount importance to get the most accurate results that we need. And going forward, I can say it's still going to be a problem. It's an issue here in Australia. It's something that's been identified. Okay, a number of different areas that we need to work on more, and I'm sure the case is still the same in India as well. We always just need better data and more comprehensive data for our research agendas.
Great input, thank you. It seems to indicate we need capacity building. Would others agree with that? And if so, how might we go about that? Anyone like to come in? Feel free, just jump in, make sure your microphone's unmuted.
I think, is that okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
Fine.
Thanks,
I think the capacity issue is a big one, because it's we here in Australia, we have a really diverse climate that we have to look at and to assess and to collect data from. But we have a small population, and therefore we are somewhat limited in our funding. So I think we learn to be we'll need to learn to be much smarter with what we're doing. And we'll also need to look at developing those areas where we have similarities to reduce what we're relying on, so that we can look forward and look at those areas where the issues are very different. I say that from the outside as a project officer, a policy officer, but that seems to me the most important thing at the moment is trying to work together to reduce the effect of the vast distances we have and the limited resources that we have to produce something which is going to be very important for our future.
And I guess many of those ideas would apply to India, would they? Would someone from India like to make a comment on that?
Yeah. In India also, we have the similar kind of diverse climate as of Australia, right? And the diversity sometimes, it also creates hurdle. For example, if you say the accessibility of the data observation or collection points in the tough terrain of the Himalaya, that is really that sometimes make it very difficult to get a observation site itself in the ground or in the region. So there are accessibility issues in few of the areas of India. This is one. And yeah, in India, you see, there are, as Dr. Lohani has mentioned, that there are many automation has been now taking place, right? But those automated water data acquisition systems, they also having some challenges related with them. For example, they don't have sensors for all the parameters what we need, water-related parameters, right? Secondly, those automatic systems in India particularly, they really needs regular maintenance, upkeeping, as well as periodic replacements. Particularly as India is facing many extreme events, for example, the floods, the droughts, tsunamis and all. So that automatic weather station, they really need periodic maintenance. So that is one point. And first and foremost, in India, water is a state subject. So the data generation or any kind of execution or the utilization of the water related data, that actually the primary responsibility of the states. So, and there are the transboundary conflicts within the states. So that again leads to the some kind of problems. And yes, and there are lot of agencies are involved at different levels. So they are storing data in different formats as well as different media. So that again become a challenge, I believe. So that's from my side.
Wonderful. Thank you for that input. Anybody else like to come in here?
I want to say one thing. Actually, in India, we are also doing drilling program, and we are collecting little logs data. And state government is also doing, private organization also doing drilling. But we don't have all type of data. So there must be some type of training, so they can collect data and upload the information in the only mobile app, not in a big platform. So we can get the all spatial data. There may not be a data gap in any part of the area. So this is the drawback, which we are thinking during the Neptune program. We want how much data we can get, then the accuracy will be more. And so we need more data, accurate data. So we need to train the like NGO peoples and involve them also in the organization, so we can get more accurate information.
Thank you. I know in our Mavi project in Rajasthan and Gujarat, we developed an app called My Well, which is spreading around India now, which enables ordinary citizens to, sorry, I should have switched that off. It enables ordinary citizens to input data. Do you see much future in that for people?
I'm not able to understand, sir. What are you telling?
I think we lost Roger. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I think we have lost Roger.
Well, I'll add my point. I was just going to say it's never been easier or cheaper to share information. So this format for, you know, it's informal. It hasn't been really hard rather than going through conferences and papers to learn from each other. So this model is one I think we really need to grab and replicate and make sure we use ongoing.
Application of technology, you want to say?
Yeah, technology, it's cheap and it's easy and it's more accessible than ever.
I think you're right there, Debbie. And it's important that we do share, because that's, whilst the countries may be different, the problems we're facing are the same. And it seems that it's one of the things that struck me since I came into this setup in November, that it's so easy for research to be duplicated, and that's such a waste of effort. So I think sharing the information is probably the most important thing we can do. And I think that goes to both questions.
Can we have something on the possible collaborations from the participants? What could be the significant collaborations between Australia and India for the written things in the water informatics? How we can have some points on this particular topic.
Well, I think that goes to Debbie's point that this is a really good starting ground for that collaboration. It's not ultra formal. We didn't have to spend thousands of dollars flying to each other's countries. So I feel like this is a really good start. And I guess what comes out of this is the most important thing. You know, if we were able to develop those ties and then take them forward out of here, that will probably be the biggest thing for developing collaboration going forward. So it'll be interesting to see how the networking event goes this afternoon, because that could be really, really good.
And I think it comes back to individual leadership, is that we each of us say, well, I'm going to make an effort to make sure some of this continues on. So it's easy to say, I'm going to leave it to a project manager or a department to make sure ongoing collaboration happens, but we can informally, through our own contacts, share what's happening and say, well, why don't we get together every month for a yarn and to share what's going on.
So we can have a common, maybe a virtual forum kind of thing, so that we can share our ideas across the platform.
Yeah, share our ideas in the process. I mean, it's easy to share information, but the process for sharing the information sometimes is a bit harder.
One thing I also want to add, I think the training process will also be easy. So grassroots people can learn also, because if the level of the training is very high, so they are not able to understand and they cannot give us the information in an accurate way. So the pattern of the training is also the simple way.
My apologies, everybody. I got cut off and then I had to re-register to get back in. So I'm not sure what's happening. If you could just keep going and I'll try and catch up.
We also look forward for your inputs regarding the, the initiation for the sustainable or significant collaboration between Australia and India.
Oh, good. Thank you. The second question. Good. Thank you.
Yeah. So can you have your views on that so that I can do something?
It struck me there was a lot of overlap between the two presentations, and I would imagine that there's a strong possibility of cooperation between the two groups that spoke today. I don't know if other people shared that view.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. And there's obviously some training needs to come out of it. I'm just wondering who you see would lead the idea of that training.
So, I mean, there's probably lessons to be learned from both sides of the equation. So I'm not necessarily sure it'd be necessarily someone leading it, but more just a meeting and saying, well, here are the things that went well for us and here are the things that didn't, and what happened on your side as well. And then I guess what comes out of that is, you know, everyone takes away their own opinions of that, and then they can apply it to their problems where they exist.
Yes, that might be something that could come up under the Arch program, I guess. The group that's one of the two groups that's running this, I understand that there will be some funding available for small projects, so that could be something that could be taken up there. Anyone else like to make an input on this second question? Everyone deep in thought.
We were just saying, Roger, how the goodwill that comes out of these types of activities, how it's never been easier.
Yes.
To share this in rather than a formal setting.
That's right. That's right.
We go back to our own teams and workmates, and we talk about how it's easy to share, and it's never been easier to network as it is right now.
And I think that's the important thing that should come out of these workshops. The groups like us meeting and so on, we pick up who we'd like to talk to and make direct contact with them to follow up afterwards. So, yeah. Is that the intention of people in this group, to do some follow-up? Because if so, there is the networking opportunity at the end of this workshop where you can join a network room and start talking about how you might go about that. I'm wondering, do we need any more formal training programs at masters or short course or anything like that? And in what areas would you see that being of most benefit to both groups, India and Australia?
Yeah, this is one thing I have put in my slide, one of the slide. We can start an academic course on the water informatics, and it can be very similar to one of the course which already there in the UK, and it is called the Water Informatics in Science and Engineering Center for the Doctoral Training. So that is WISECDT. So it's already a doctoral program that is being run in the University of Leicester, I believe.
Great. That's one opportunity then. Is there anything going on like in Australia that could be tapped into?
I don't know about Australia, whether Australia having similar kind of program or not.
Yeah. We do have the Young Water Professionals program coming out of the Australia-India Water Centre. We've got 20 people enrolled in that at the moment, and we're hoping that we might be able to repeat that as another program for another group next year. And I think some of this sort of information could feed into that training very well.
I'd like to share some of my ideas. Can I?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. Like that Young Water Professionals program is going on. So we from government sectors are involved in this training. So like public sector is already involved, and I hope so in the future such trainings, if will be organized, will be of great help for this collaboration between the two countries. But if you want to engage NGOs and other private sectors, that I think workshops highlighting the success stories regarding solution of water, like in both the countries, there are diverse problems regarding water. Like here in Rajasthan, there's very scarce water. The management portion we have to focus more upon, and in other places like in Northeast, there are a lot of plenty of water available. There are also management we have to look, but in different perspective. So like in Marvi project, their success story, this is a type of success story. So in workshops between the two countries, like where participants, NGOs and private sectors from both the countries can join, not online. I'm focusing on offline. That will be a great impact, I think. Similarly from Australia also, if you have some success stories, we can share both the success stories in that workshops. That will be like more enthusiastic, and that will create awareness, and that will lead people to think like, okay, this situation was there and these measures have helped out to figure out the problems. So I think these highlights of the success stories will be of great use, and that will attract NGOs and other private sectors, because apart from public sector, like we are here 20 young water professionals. In future you can add more, but for NGOs and private sectors, I think this will be better.
Okay, I see we're about to close, but that's an excellent idea, and I guess we need to share those success stories, and that's something that you're all asked to contribute after the meeting. Any success stories you're aware of, either directly or indirectly. Any quick final comments from anyone before we join the main meeting? And I hope our recorder's ready to present as group 2.
Okay, so I think first let's do a bit of an introduction. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Yeah, audible. Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Ishwak. Okay, so let's do a bit of introduction of each one of us. My name is Dharma Hagare. I'm from Western Sydney University. I basically work in School of Engineering. My area of work is in wastewater reuse and sustainable water use, sustainable urban water use. Those are the areas I work with. So let's go the next person, Udesh Kumar.
Okay. Thanks. Myself, Udesh Kumar. I am working in Central Groundwater Board under Ministry of Jal Shakti as a hydrologist. My area of working in the groundwater management, and basically I am involved in this data generation also for the NHP project. We regularly monitor the groundwater level and quality in terms of quality and quantity. That's it. Apart from that, I am also working on Economist mapping project, which is flagship project of Ministry of Jal Shakti. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So very much in the business of collecting data. This is very good. Okay, Dr. Vivek Sharma. I think you're muted, Dr. Vivek.
Hello.
Yeah, go on.
I am Dr. Vivek Sharma, working in Central Groundwater Board, PSU Faridabad, which is under Ministry of Jal Shakti, and I am engaged in monitoring of progress, different type of progresses, and reported to Ministry and other sections or department. And I am also working with data compilation and report writing. Thank you.
So you work for Jal Shakti?
Central Groundwater Board, Ministry of Jal Shakti.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Dr. Ashwin Kokkat.
Hello. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. My name is Ashwin. I'm working in CSIR NGRA, National Geophysical Research Institute. I'm working as a senior project associate. So I'm mainly working on groundwater modeling and remote sensing data. So we are estimating the total water quantity in different river basins like Godavari and Ganga on sub-basin scale using in-situ data and also using remote sensing like grace data, processing of grace data. Also we are working on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Bashir Ahmed. Can you hear us? No. Mr. Abdul Rahman. We can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Sir, my name is Abdul Rahman, working as an assistant engineer in groundwater wing, government of Tamil Nadu. And my job is groundwater management and data collection and implementing NHP project. In this domain, I am working.
Okay, fantastic. Very good. Thank you. Bashir, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead and
I am Bashir Ahmed from Srinagar, Jammu and Kashmir. I am working as assistant professor, Department of Water Management.
Okay, fantastic.
Higher education.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the next person is Aarti. Aarti, can you hear us? Aarti Soni. No? Okay, so let's move on. So we have got two questions. I think some of you remember the questions, I suppose. So the first question is so the first question is, what are the key challenges and opportunities related to water informatics in research, planning, capacity building for Australia and India for the next 5 to 10 years? So the key challenges and opportunities in water informatics. So what do you guys think? So what do you guys think about the challenges, key challenges? Is a data collection is an issue, or is the the funding an issue? What do you guys think? Yeah.
I think, sir, for Indian scenario, we have very limited data. Just like we are dealing with the groundwater, so till now we have very limited data. We are widely using groundwater, but we have limited monitoring stations. And although the Central Groundwater Board and state government are doing the piezometer and monitoring the piezometer, but still it is very less. And if we can take up the citizens well, like in Australia, in the first presentation that has been mentioned that 800,000 bore wells are monitored and the data is coming. So I also would like to know from you also whether that has been monitored on a central server, or that has been fixed with telemetry. What is that? I don't know whether we can start in India or also. So if you know, sir, please comment.
The one what Dr. Lohani was talking about, that India Waris database. Have you guys used any one of them? Any one of you?
Yes, sir. We are using that thing, and actually our data is also going to India Waris, and whenever required, we download the data from the India Waris also, vice versa. But still, I think it's very limited data. It's not like in every block 4 or 5 stations are there. And it's not possible, like the groundwater, it's in hard rock terrain especially, the groundwater regime changes a lot. So we need to have information at village level, but still we do not have we cannot fix a piezometer at every village. So that is data availability is maybe one of the issues which we can increase by incorporating the citizens well. I think your public private wells.
So in terms of availability, is it available easily, or you need to get approvals? How does that work?
No, sir. It is available publicly by simply you can selecting the layer and just giving the email ID. Anyone can download the data from anywhere. It's publicly available.
So it's publicly available. Okay.
Actually, I have been using this eWater. So maybe some years back, some 3-4 years back, it was a little more user friendly. But now I feel it's not that user friendly. Earlier, we were able to download the data, and the data has not been updated for many of the states. For some states, they have updated the data, but many of the states, the data is not updated. Recent data is not available. So I feel that they have to make this eWater more user friendly.
So it is currently not user friendly.
It's not user friendly. And they have to update the latest data, and it has to be updated for all the states in India.
Okay. So the latest data means how far back it goes. Does it give you last year or 2 years back? Or what it gives?
I have to check. I have to check that.
Oh, okay. So for example, in Australia, this biome data. So I can go and get yesterday's rainfall data. So you can't get something like that.
I don't think we will be able to access that very frequent, like yesterday's data or last month's data. We will not be able to get that kind of data. And we have like issues like login. Like today, if I try to log in, I have to create an account. I have to log in, and after 1 month, if I try, sometimes I will not be able to use the same login credentials. I will not be able to use. Then I have to make another with another different mail ID. I have to make another login credential, and I have to log in again. So these were the issues which is I'm facing.
So still there are issues with accessibility, I suppose. Yeah?
Accessibility, yes. And it is not in a desired for like most of the data which we use for modeling or some other purpose. We need that we may have to like upload a watershed or a small micro watershed boundary and download the data for whatever like water level data or some other data is there. We need to download it for some micro watershed. Those kind of options are also not available. It's mostly like administrative boundaries. They are not considering that hydrological boundaries.
Okay. So it basically gives you a data for a particular site. But it may not relate to the area what you're looking for.
Yeah, most of our our studies will be on a hydrological basis. Maybe like for the NHP, it will be like on an administrative administrative scale, like a block, taluk or district than state-wise. But as a researcher, I'll be more interested on a watershed scale.
So the data should be more on.
There must be a flexibility between the watershed and on the administrative, both the.
Both, you should be able to select whether you want a watershed based data or administrative based data.
Yeah. Both the options must be there, or maybe an option where we can upload our shapefile, our boundary, our desired study area, and we can download it.
So that's providing more flexibility in terms of downloading the data.
That is this.
Okay, so that's a very good point.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
I want to ask a question, sir.
Yeah, please go on.
Sir, actually, this water informatics is relevant to the sustainable water use. So I think I suggested that skilled manpower should be prepared. Number one. Number two, the existing faculties all around.
I think your audio is breaking, Bashir.
Sorry, sir.
Your
Are you
audio
listening,
is
me, sir?
breaking. Audio is breaking. It is not continuous.
Actually, it is network problem.
Yeah, yeah. Can you repeat your the point?
Faculty. Comment. Yeah. Comment box.
Yeah. Okay. I think. Yeah, unable to hear. Okay. So meanwhile, I think let's look at the second question. The second question is related to. How do we initiate yeah, so how do we initiate and sustain significant collaboration between Australia and India for research, training, capacity building in water informatics? Discuss this with regard to the engagement with researchers, NGOs, public and private sector. So how do we how do we promote the collaboration? Yeah, that's a good point, Bashir. I think you put that point there. So promote, training, I suppose. Yeah, training of academic and industry personnel. Yeah, so that
I think you got my.
Yeah, I got your point. So how can we do that? Through a sort of a exchange programs. What are you thinking?
I think exchange information is.
I think you can communicate via chat, I suppose. Chat is better.
Yeah, here it is when network problem, sir.
Yeah.
I am in a remote. I am on the mountain.
Mountain.
Here it is higher educational institute.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right. I think if you could.
I have a research laboratory also. I am working. Yeah, I am working.
Okay, so any other point?
There is problem. Yeah. Here it is problem regarding network issues.
Yeah, understand. Yeah, but still you managed to join today's
that is why it
workshop.
Great.
That's really
Right
good.
to join this.
That's very good. So any other point I got? The training, exchange of staff and personnel. So what else do you think? So what else can be done?
This Australian Water Partnership, they can arrange any trainings or something like that.
To organize more training.
Yeah. And another thing which I have seen is that it is mostly
besides
like
training is,
Yeah. Okay, go on, Dr. Ashwin.
Yeah, most thing is like that. Most.
Besides training is.
Yeah, sir, carry on, carry on.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, one thing
besides
I have noticed.
Training is we should.
There is a lag. That's why.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, go on, Dr. Ashwin.
Sir, this mostly NHP associated, that state groundwater department people are more like they can access these trainings carried out by the NHP and Australian water partnerships. But like we are not that much associated with NHP and all, so it's not accessible for us. Even I had applied for some NHP trainings, so I was only shortlisted for 1 or 2 only. I was not able to attend the other NHP trainings.
So in that way, what you're saying is the NHP should organize more training programs.
Trainings, so and it should be open to like those from this hydrology and hydrogeology background, those who are working in that area.
Okay, okay.
Bashir sir, please carry on.
Yeah. And it should be open for the.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Friends, workshops should be held regularly so that we can share information, ideas, innovations online. And from your side, we want that these water informatics softwares, latest softwares regarding the new technology should be updated. We will get aware about these softwares, and if fit, then trainings should be also conducted so that we can participate in trainings. We get updated for knowledge.
Yeah, I think new technology is very important, isn't it? Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that is. Because in previous years we will use titration as other methods. Now technology has gone way forward that we use digital tools to monitor the water quality. But there are still various technological issues so that we can overcome in remote areas, particularly where water resources are in abundance, so that they can be equally distributed and they can be used in sustainable nature, and their conservation is also important. Decision should be taken as per the information available.
So how one can collect the data in remote areas.
Yeah.
So for that,
that is difficult but need efforts and this day-to-day updated technology.
So to collect the data from remote areas, you would need something like telemetry or some of those technologies.
Yeah, baseline data.
Okay, so so any other for collaboration, any other the discussion points you guys have? I got the workshops and exchange of staff. Sorry, exchange of staff and personnel. Organize more training programs. NHP to lead some of the training programs. So anything else? So in terms of technology, in India there is the got a bit of telemetric technology now available. Telemetric technology. So do you have telemetric technology now?
So we have started installing the telemetry system in groundwater. As far as groundwater is concerned, we have to start it in Central Groundwater Board.
Okay. So
telemetry stations, that technology is available in India. but it's very less data are available. Like less has been implemented by the agencies.
So we need more stations like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in remote areas. And with more sensors, like more for like rainfall, wind, solar radiation, and other things. With more
What about
sensors.
quality? Water quality?
Hi, everybody. I'm Ricky Spencer. I'm going to facilitate this breakout room and obviously continue on from some wonderful talks and I guess getting your opinion and taking that back to the broader group. As so we've got about 23 minutes. I'll just let I think we might have just a couple of minutes introduction. I'm Ricky Spencer. I'm from Western Sydney University. My background is in biodiversity, extinction crisis, that sort of thing, particularly focused in aquatic systems. I might hand it over to you, Ken, to introduce yourself.
Hey, sorry, I'll just ask, just could everybody please mute, just so we've got a quiet room speaker.
Seems to be a fair bit of background conversation. I don't know,
That's better now.
Are we connected with some other group or?
No, we're all good.
Okay, Ken Langford, friend of Basant's. I lectured at Hawkesbury campus, Western Sydney Uni, in rural development. I've done a fairly major project with the Tamil Nadu Agricultural University about curriculum design in their courses. It's quite interesting, sort of thinking about water. I currently am semi-retired and I've just run an excursion for high school children in Sydney Olympic Park, which is a designed urban area with a recycling system for water runoff. So I'm just interested in what everybody has to say about these kinds of things and, the sort of impact on urban areas, collection of runoff and recycle reusing. That's enough from me.
Cool, thanks, Ken. Professor Tanu Jindal, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, yeah. So good morning here and good afternoon there. I've already spoken about, as you must have heard me that, I am more into the quality issues of the water supply or water. So I would like to, again reiterate my statement that, we need to analyze the toxicants which are, emerging pollutants. And I spoke about POPs, but I would also like to speak about microplastic pollution, nanoplastic pollution along with that, and many heavy metals and certain areas have their own issues of arsenic, chloride, contamination, specialized one in that regard. And in India, generally, only the physicochemical parameters have been tested, which is not enough. So a major program must be raised, into it and brought into, and people, all stakeholders who can contribute to it, must join hands.
Thank you for that. Henry, could you introduce yourself, please?
Well, good morning to our Indian colleagues, or if it's just gone afternoon where you are, good afternoon. And good afternoon, Australians. My name is Henry. I'm with the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment in Canberra. I won't put my camera on because I'm at home today and Zoom doesn't have a background function like Teams does. So I'm just here on voice. I work in the international engagement section with DOR. So we are the ones that we are the custodians of that MOU that was spoken about at the start. And it's our responsibility to make sure that there's always a slate of projects between Australia and India in water resources management. So I'm really happy to be here today, not as a subject matter expert, but as an international engagement policy officer with the Australian Department. So thank you.
And lastly, Alok, how are you? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon to all of you. Sorry, actually I'm using a new system. I don't have camera facility here. So I'm I work on voice only. So I'm Dr. Alok Kumar Meher. I'm from Central Pollution Control Board, Delhi, and my area of expertise is development of analytical method for elemental analysis by using AAS, ICP, OES, and ICP-MS. And I am looking after some technological aspect for remediation of groundwater pollutants like arsenic, selenium, fluoride, etc. on a community scale.
Cool, thank you. So we'll jump into the questions. I guess the first question I'll just read out verbatim, but then we can ad lib from there. But what are the key challenges and opportunities related to water informatics in research, training, capacity building for Australia and India for the next 5 to 10 years? From my perspective, I think there's a couple of, I guess it's a two-way channel here in that how do you assure quality of data coming in? So in terms of how to, and then utilize that, and then how does that then get incorporated and integrated into management on the ground from right down from higher levels, government levels, right down to that farmer or on land. So would someone like to take the lead here in terms of talking about that? Can I Henry, do you want to start off?
Yeah, no problem, Ricky. Thank you. So I think that when you're looking at how water data can be, or water data products can be promoted through the bilateral partnership, the first thing that you've got to look at, and this is the case for most partnerships, especially internationally, is where are the commonalities? What are the things that we share? What are the things that the two countries share in terms of challenges, in terms of opportunities? Where's the alignment? Where's the alignment between the situation on the ground in both countries? And then you look at the way that Australia is handling, what it might be groundwater recharge and information surrounding groundwater recharge in Australia, and then you think about how that could be applied in the Indian context. And on the other hand, you look at the way the Indian context is using citizen science, for example, to contribute to water data collection, and then we can think about ways of introducing those kinds of practices into Australia. So I think that to facilitate and foster cooperation, which, if I'm not mistaken, was the question, is first of all looking at the alignments, and that's what our team does in the department. And what we're hoping to do for the next couple of years is to just look at the alignment between the situation on the ground in both countries and find where the practices, where there is alignment, where do the practices differ and why. That's probably my little 2 cents on that.
Cool, thank you, Henry. We've got a few other guests in here. Would you like to introduce yourself? And we're talking about the first question about what are the key challenges for and opportunities related to water informatics between the two countries over the next 5 to 10 years. Who would like to, with our Dr. Krishnaveni, would you like to talk about that? Maybe introduce yourself initially, so because you've just joined us, but have you got anything you'd like to add to that? Hello. Hello. Any newcomers like to add to that? And maybe introduce yourself. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, sir. I'm Dr. Krishnaveni, Professor, Center for Water Resources from Anna University, Chennai. The question is the challenges for water informatics. The real-time monitoring of data is one of the challenges, sir. I felt it is more, that is acquisition of the flood data, water quality data, and then now the data are only in a static manner. They are collecting manually and entering into the system. But what we need is the real-time data acquisition, and then creating the database, and then incorporating the latest technologies also into the data acquisition, like IoT and all can be incorporated for the data acquisition. That is what I felt, sir.
Brilliant, that's great. Is it Rohitash?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And good morning to Indian partners. Myself, Professor Rohitash Kumar. I am professor at Seri Kashmir University of Agriculture Sciences and Technology, Srinagar. And currently I am with Western Sydney University as a visiting fellow. We know Kashmir, it is a Himalayan state, and that have very diverse climate, means temperate climate, and in some area there is cold desert area, there is a glaciers. So main problem in that area is availability of data. It is means easily not available. Then quality of data is also very poor, and means easily data is not available to our research scholar for analysis of means academicians, and quality also very poor. And in remote area there is a means not any means automatic rain gauge, means very scattered data is available, not everywhere, means which diverse climate means not available in that area. So these are different means key challenges in that Himalayan state, and there is a not one central point from where academician can collect the data, and there is another problem in because in that state there is a plenty of surface water, and major Indus river flow from that state, and many times there occurred flood problems. So without lacking of these data, these are different problems faced by this particular this Himalayan states. So how we means this one is the opportunity how we analysis of these different kinds of data, means because there is a snow glacier snow data is not available in that area. So these are different challenges in that.
Thanks, Rohitash. A follow-up question from that is, you mentioned about quality of data, very poor quality data, and I guess some of the Australian insights, I guess comparisons as well. Does it come down to one, technology, two, training, and three, maybe the combination of both in terms of data and lack of resources to ensure that quality of data? And if there's anyone here that can maybe give some examples, I guess, of how that was, how those problems have been rectified in specific examples, that would be really good. Does somebody want to? Rohitash, did you want to just address that initially about quality of data? Where do you see the problem is in terms of whether it's training, technology, equipment, those kind of things that are the issues that ultimately is it lack of resources?
Yeah. Actually, in the second part, we can means collaborate from both country, means collaborations from student sides, means exchange program of student, our PhD programs means tackle joint problems, and exchange program of our faculty, then organize different trainings on different key issues, then collaboration with the industry or NGOs, and for that industry working on this means especially on these hydrological data management, different NGO are working, and different evaluating agency also they are working in that Himalayan or any other parts. So collaboration between NGOs, then different industries, then academicians, then organize different workshop trainings. These are play a very important role to solve these different key issues.
Did anyone else want to jump in around this, around quality of data, and any specific examples that you have seen to improve that and ensure that the quality of data coming in is there? I thought maybe Henry, from a departmental point of view, is this something that is addressed at a higher level in terms of to ensure that data? One, we talk about quality, but also real time. You know, having it being real time obviously is very important for it to be utilised, at least anyway.
Yeah, look, I mean, I only can speak from the international engagement perspective because that's the area that I work in. And, you know, I think that if you're working in a state government in Australia, that's where you have access to the real-time data collection capabilities.
Yeah.
So if you look at the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning in Victoria and the, you know, Environmental Protection Authority in Victoria, I mean, that's where the real-time collection's taking place. Those are the people that are probably best placed to answer that question. But what I can say from the international engagement perspective, from where I sit with the Commonwealth, is that a big part of our international environmental reputation and Australia's reputation as a sort of a leader in water resources management, a big part of that is quality data. And without quality data, it gets very, very hard to stand up and say, for example, with the Sustainable Development Goals, to say, you know, we are one of the leaders in SDG 6, clean water and sanitation. That's not possible without, you know, really robust data. The difference, I think, and the challenges that might be faced if you look at a country like India as compared to a country like Australia, India is infinitely more complex in the demographics of the population. The vastness of the landscape may not necessarily be that different, but in terms of the spread of the population over that landscape, it's massively more diverse than Australia. I mean, we have some very, very high percentage of our population all along the East Coast. So in terms of the population spread in Australia, it's nowhere near as tricky as in India. You know, simple numbers would show Australia's population is a couple of % of India's. And it makes it very difficult, I think, for Australian practices. In many cases, it makes it difficult for Australian practices to be transposed over to India. The principles remain the same. I'd be very interested to hear the Indian perspective on this too, that in Australia, a big part of what we do is we try to gather data at the highest possible quality, to the highest level of accuracy, and with the highest degree of reliability on the greatest number of variables we can. And we use that information for improving the systems in Australia. And my team and I use that information for promoting Australia's success internationally. I'd be interested to see how high up on the list of priorities it is for India to use water data for international reputation or for promoting success against things like Sustainable Development Goals. Because to put it frankly, India is probably more concerned with delivering higher quality water and delivering higher quality water services to its population than it is to standing up and saying that it's had success on Sustainable Development Goal 6, for example. So I would be really interested to see what the Indian priorities are with water data products, because for us, those priorities might be quite different.
Yes, Ricky, I agree with you. In fact, I would like to again say that, you know, I have visited Adelaide since the population is less in Australia. I have visited Adelaide sewage treatment plant, you know, where the sewage is brought at one point and then it is treated. So in India, which is not possible because of the huge population and huge sewage waste being generated. So what we have proposed, the need of decentralized STP plants with the help of resident welfare associations and also CSR and some contribution from government. So I have been working since a long time on, you know, decentralized systems of STP plants, you know, which are energy efficient. I mean, which run on their own biogas energy, and the compost can be given to the residents. Also, the water can be diverted to the parks. So that's how, you know, that is one concept which I have been working and find it as a solution, because the drains which carry the waste in rivers through the sewers are also unlined. And in one of my study, these drains are contaminating even the groundwater by leaching. They have become a leaching point. They are not concrete at the base. So what solution, you know, what I see for India is decentralization. I mean, treating the waste at the main sewer, and these drains can only be used for, you know, rainwater harvesting. And once you are not putting waste in the rivers, they can clean themselves in the next flow. So if we can, you know, think in this direction, how Australia can help us in, you know, providing or making a pilot project for decentralized STPs, and maybe RWs can contribute money, per house. So it means, the basic principle is take care of your own waste.
Yeah,
so this
absolutely. And I mean, I think that that's a really good example there of the differences in scale between the Australian situation and the Indian situation is that, in Australia to line, for example, to line channels and to line canals and to concrete canals is it might be a 3-year project across most of the country, whereas in India we're talking much more time and much higher cost input for something like that. So I mean, just to bring it back to water data quality, the challenges that Australia faces are dwarfed in many senses just in the scale of the challenges faced by India because of the multiplication factor. But there's no reason why the principles that we use in Australia for maintaining a high degree of, a high quality of water data can't be transposed to the Indian situation. The question is, how can we ensure that data is continually recorded reliably and accurately in such a vast and difficult demographic? It's not a question for my team. My team, for example, what I would do is I'd make sure that this is a focus on our bilateral relationship, and then there would be people like Janice Green that would come in and actually provide that service. So I wish I could speak more from a subject matter expertise area. I can only talk about what this means for the cooperation. But thank you, Professor Jindal, for making those points, because it's interesting for me to take forward as we continue to manage the relationship in the next financial year.
Yeah, thank you so much for acknowledging the idea, because since I have been born and brought up here, I'm a Delhiite. So I know the problem, I know the solution. The only thing is that, getting onto it with the energy efficient STP plants, because even if you install STP plants, they're not running in absence of the electricity. So something, which I am giving a model, which everybody is a participant in that and for everybody's benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I thought we've got 2 minutes left, and I think that really did just sort of move into the second question about initiating and sustaining significant collaboration between the two countries, which I think from what you said, Henry, in terms of those principles that that Australia's developed, I guess where we developed them from though, Henry, as well. Like what's been obviously where have we taken the lead from and to develop our own set of principles or frameworks going forward?
That's a really good question. I think people at the Bureau or at BOM or at ABS would be better placed to answer.
Yeah.
From what I understand, Australia's the federal government delineated water management rights to the states in the Constitution, and it was that move was so that the states could make those decisions around water accounting, water delivery, water pricing, etc., for themselves. And so it's been done. Each state has done it differently, and you only need to look at the Murray-Darling Basin to know, just to see how radically differently each state has decided to handle its water resources. So it's a complicated question that you've asked. Where have we taken the lead from? I think the federal level handling it is a best possible compilation of the data that's been derived at the state level, and through organisations like the Bureau of Meteorology, Australian Bureau of Statistics, Geoscience Australia, they've managed to come up with a pretty good and robust water account, and water data sheets, data sets. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to know what is the genesis of Australia's water data collection, because it is quite good as far as I understand internationally.
We've got 4 seconds. We'll see if we go past that. We're about to go. So we've got 59 seconds left. So thank you, everybody. I know we didn't get quite everywhere and to everyone. Please, if you've got more comments, put it in the chat and it will all be collated. I do thank you for the discussion we've had today. And keep thinking about those collaborations and initiations that we can develop and over the next few years particularly. So this is what these workshops were for, to start thinking about that. Let's not end it here. And please, you'll have access to everyone's email to talk to people, those kind of things. So please definitely jump in. So thank you very much. I'll head back to the other room.
I think we're welcoming everybody back from the breakout rooms. Hope you all had a really good discussion there. So welcome back. Now we're going to hear back about those discussions in a moment, and I think some people are still coming in. So I'm going to ask the moderators or their reporters to report back. And if you hear that another room has made the same point, if you could just, to avoid repetition, just mention the new material. So I think in room 1, is it Professor Sathasivan who's reporting?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right. So I think we have had some fruitful discussion among our members, and for those 2 questions, probably I will summarize both of them together, just to highlight what are the key points that we have discussed. I think we were discussing about sort of identifying what are the key strengths in each of the country, in both in Australia and on Indian side, and then how the exchange can be actually facilitated. And then in that, we identified few things like flood forecasting and then water resource planning, and then those things are quite strong in Australian side, probably that can be exchanged, or that can, I mean, some collaboration can happen. Then we were also talking about how water informatics actually can help to make sure that the data that is collected can reach the local level, to the village level, or to the farmer. And then Basant was mentioning about a village, 2 village located just 5 kilometers apart, but having completely different rainfall pattern, and then crop is failing in one, then crop is growing in the other. So how that data can be actually localized so that the useful information can be drawn for the public, and that aspect we have been talking about. The other we were talking about is the ensuring the quality of the data, how we can ensure the quality of the data, especially from the Indian side as well as in Australian side. The other thing that we have been talking about, because I scribbled, so I'm just trying to get the other one aspect that came, because if it is a capacity building, then capacity building has to incorporate actually, it has to reach local people.
Professor Sathasivan, we've lost you. I'm sorry.
That through those, this capacity building can take place, and then what's that?
You just faded in and out for a moment there, but we can hear you again.
Okay. So I think I'm just mentioning about the community-based organization and NGOs were strong, and then so through that better collaboration and then capacity building can be established throughout the country. And then the other that the key point that was coming out from our discussion was about the India government's initiative to have water for every community, every person, and for clean drinking water. And then if that clean drinking water has to be reached to those places, and then those places, we need to understand the quality, and then the informatics actually water informatics has to have some facilities so that the water quality in each of the place and the water quantity in each of the places can be mapped in terms of drinking water. And probably there were some discussion. Someone was mentioning that there is some different ministry working on it, but how that all those things can be reached, and then it can reach the local people so that people can make the right decision on whether to drink a particular water or not to drink the water. I think that, and then to sustain the program, I think basically exchange programs and collaborations and joint training programs are mentioned as important aspects. So I hope I have mentioned everything. If I have missed, if other people who were in my team or breakout room can put additional points, I'm more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting to hear all of that. So could I now ask from room 2, I think Roger, was that your room?
Yes, that was my room. I got logged out for a little while and had to log back in, but we fortunately had a recorder, and I'd invite him please to give the presentation.
Thank you, Roger. So in room 2, we discussed both the issues regarding the challenges and opportunities, as well as about the collaborations. So the point we discussed in our room about the challenges and opportunities, the very first and foremost point was about the data consistency and the accuracy of the data, which directly indicates the QA and the QC of the data, the quality assurance and the quality check of the data sets before it goes into the system. That means before it becomes a part of any informatics system. So that was the first, and after that, the capacity building for the smart working, as well as optimizing the water uses, different uses for different sectors. That is again one of the key challenge you can see, and which has to be given a proper emphasis. And the next point or challenge in our group was about, it was pertaining to India, that in India, water is a state subject, and whatever the rights on the water about its data generation, execution of the project, or the utilization, that all belongs to the states in India. So in some times there are a few water conflicts occur between the states. So that is one of the challenge. Accessibility of the data collection points and the remoteness of the observation sites, particularly in the difficult terrain like Himalayas, that is again still a challenge in Indian part. So India, the Himalaya is full of snow and glaciers, having an altitude more than 8,000, and so that is again one of the challenge. And that is still a data sparse region, one of the data sparse region in India subcontinent. And the capacity building of the local community, as well as the NGOs which are working in the field of water, the local observers and the field workers. So actually the data collection is being made by these people. So the capacity building program for these peoples, it is very must. It has to be done at that level. So that is one point. And the replication of the technologies and the sharing of the information on the best practices, that can be an opportunity for making the collaboration. Now we come to the all possible collaboration between Australia and India. So the first point is about the replication of technology and sharing of the information. Second, we can also set up some kind of virtual forum for sharing our thoughts or updates on the various aspects of the hydroinformatics or updates. And one member has suggested that the pattern of the training has to be looked into carefully. That means who are the target participants and what is the pattern or what are the content of the course for that. And it has been also discussed that the climatic conditions and other things are very similar both the countries like Australia and India. They have similar kind of climate and all. So there is a strong possibility of collaboration in the research in the water field as well as. And to start with some joint research project, funding can be sought for some joint research project, as well as some exchange program can also be, they can be a start point. for collaboration. And finally, we also discussed, Roger has suggested having, maybe we can have a common academic program dedicatedly on the water informatics, so that the more opportunities can be explored. And we discussed that UK already having one doctoral program on the water informatics. So I believe that is all from my side. And if I miss something, then my fellow will be, filling that part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manish. That's really helpful. Could I now ask, I think, Dharma, you in charge of room number 3.
Yes, thanks, Karen. Yeah, I think a lot of points have been covered by Sathaa and Manish, I suppose. There's a couple of points which came up in our room. I think as far as the challenges and opportunities are concerned, I think there was quite a bit of, the feedback on India Waris. I think there are a few people who used India Waris. They said recently it is not that user-friendly to use. And also there is a limited data. So I think the challenge would be to develop that India Waris system with, more data collection and make it more user-friendly. And containing lots of data apart from the quantity, the quality as well. So that point was discussed quite a bit there. And also I think the data collection from the remote communities, that is pretty much lacking, I think, in both the countries, I suppose. So there was a bit of discussion, how we can improve the data collection in the remote communities. So that's regarding the challenges. Coming to the collaboration between Australia and India, I think one of the very good point which came up was AWP, Australian Water Partnership, and NHP, National Hydrology Project. The one Australian and another Indian. The organization should take a leading role in training and capacity building the water professionals in collecting, managing, water data. That was one of the points which came out. I think the rest of the points are very similar to the other two. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much, Dharma. And could I ask to report back on room number 4, please? I think that's Alok Kumar Mayor.
Hello.
Hello. Please let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, good morning and good afternoon to all of you. I am Alok Kumar Mayor reporting from Kurumapur. And as per discussion at our room, the first and foremost, the key challenge is this acquisition of real-time water quality data. Like in India and most well in Australia also, we are relying on the static data generation, and we are unaware of this fact of this real quality data. So we can develop some technological system or some IoT based system for real-time data acquisition system. The second important challenge is India has huge diversity in terms of demography and waste, in terms of quality and quantity of wastewater generation, land use planning. So there is a difference of scales. So we have to develop some proper management, some policy framework should be there. The third mode, the key challenge is non-availability of this water information or water quality data, particularly at this remote region of Himalaya and north in this India. And if some data is also available there, that the reliability of data is the question mark. So because for framing a good regulation, the data quality is to be ensured. And the fourth key challenge is the lack of resources. Like in India, that training part or this networking collaboration, the water quality networking is very poor in terms of, and who are working on this water quality, they are also not technologically well informed. So we have to upgrade our mindset of this, particularly those people engaged in this water quality data generation, they should be trained properly. The second part, coming to the second part, this collaboration networking between India and Australia. Yes, we have developed some good collaboration between India and Australia. For example, like your water professional training program. Like we can learn from each other. Like Australia is well known for this leadership in water quality data generation. They are producing highest this quality of water data. that can be that technology can be transferred to India. Second one is concept of wastewater reuse in terms of decentralized wastewater treatment or energy efficient wastewater treatment plant. This aquifer recharging, managed aquifer recharging in Australia, that technology and that regulation can be transferred to India. And some good practices from India like citizen involvement in groundwater data collection, like this Marvi project, this Bhujal information, that common people are involved in this water quality data information management. So that can be extended to Australia. So these are the highlights of our group discuss. If I miss something, some other group member may fill this gap.
Thank you very much. That's all very useful feedback. And I think we mentioned that we're developing a report and we can incorporate all of this feedback into our report back to our various government departments. Basant, I'm going to hand over to you now because I think we're ready for our open forum.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And now we have a really interesting part of the program. So we will have 3 panelists who will share their thoughts for 5 to 7 minutes. And we are starting with Dr. Manish Nema. And he's a water resources engineer and currently serving as a Scientist D in the Water Resources Systems Division of the National Institute of Hydrology at Roorkee. He has over 16 years of experience in R&D, and he specializes in water resources management. So, Dr. Nema.
Thank you, sir. I have 3 slides. Can I share that slides?
Yes, probably go ahead. If you can limit the timings, please.
It's only 3. So to start with, that India is a diverse country, similar to Australia. And India is diverse in many ways. For example, the climate, soil, topography, vegetation, and so on. So the problems are also quite different from region to region, right? For example, you can see the variation of the rainfall. Here, the second figure shows the variation of the groundwater, right? How deep is the groundwater levels across the India. So in the western part, the groundwater is far below, right? And few parts where the groundwater is on the surface itself. This is about the climate. So India is having a tropical and subtropical kind of climate. It varies from hot and humid to hot and dry to cold and arid to cold and wet. So variety of climatic situations are there. Similar to, if you see this is the elevation ranges, and it ranges from say less than 100 meters so to more than say 4,000 meters. So based on the diversity of India, I have just listed down a few points regarding the challenges and the opportunities pertaining to the water informatics in India. So I'm just going to have the challenges which can be seen in India pertaining to the water informatics. I've listed down like that. I also mentioned that in India, water is a state subject. So India uses a decentralized and localized mechanism to collect the data, right, at the district levels, and that is a part of the states. So the data generating, executing, and utilizing agencies, these are the primary responsibilities of the state. And there are many rivers which flows, transboundary rivers are there, which flow across the states. So there are water conflicts among those states. That is a key challenge which India, we need to take care of that. Second, I have also mentioned that in the difficult terrains, the accessibility of creating a monitoring site itself is a challenge. I am working on the Himalayas and I have established a few gauging sites over there, and I can understand how difficult it is to establish a simple gauging site in the Himalayan river. In India, we have a huge flow variations. See, we got the summer monsoons, wherein the flow goes, say in my case, it was around 35 Qmax. And in the lean season, it flows around, say, half Qmax. So the variation is from half Qmax to 35 Qmax. So that kind of variation is there in the Himalayan river particularly. So that is a key challenge which we need to take care of. Second, I also mentioned that with due course of time, with the HP1, HP2, and the now NHP, lot many automated water data acquisition system has been placed in various places. But important was that the regular maintenance and upkeeping of these instruments are very essential, very crucial, and that is also a challenge. Basically, in India, we have lot many extreme events. For example, the flood, the heat waves, and the cyclone, and so on. So under those events, these particularly automated systems, they got spoiled. So they don't provide a good quality of data. So that is one. And yeah, as I have told you, there are diversity in the data collection agency. So there is a non-uniformity exists in the amazing standards. Although we are working on the standardization of the data, but still lot many work has to be done here. Okay, so that has to be done at both the level, at state level as well as the union level. And maintenance of the data in the various formats as well as various media. For example, few people they are collecting data in Excel or PDF or CSV, or few are there collecting data in the report forms or register, right? So to centralize those data in a particular format, that is our key challenge, right? And most importantly, in India, the situation is different from Australia. Australia is a standalone country; it's a continent. But India, subcontinent, India as a country, we are having many neighbor countries, and we have some transboundary rivers. For example, Indus, Brahmaputra, and Ganges. So the data sharing is an issue, obviously with the neighbor countries. So these are few of the challenges which we need to take care of. And if we talk about the opportunities, then obviously, as mentioned by Professor Maheshwari in the morning, that the use of the ICTs, that is the information and communication technology tools, and that solely that is the citizen science or the crowdsourcing, that can be an opportunity which can be tapped in order to make the India water informatics boom in the coming, say, 5 to 10 years, right? Apart from that, we need to adopt the smart and innovative water technologies in order to minimize the operational inefficiencies or the expenditure and maximize the effectiveness of the capital investments. So that is one. As mentioned in the morning, by Dr. Lohani, that in the government of India has set up NWIC, that is National Water Informatics Centers, by the Department of Water Resources, Ministry of Water Resources. So this has been just started in 2019 itself. So we need to strengthen this NWIC. So whatever the data we collect, we make to sure that all the data is available at the NWIC for their respective users. The capacity building in water sector across the platform or the groups, we have seen that the capacity building term has been, given as a feedback, as an opportunity feedback in the water sector, right? So that is what, and it has to be done for the different sectors, user sectors. For example, the municipal, agriculture, and industrial sectors. And we need to focus more on the sector which consumes a lot of water. For example, the agriculture sector, which is a major consumer, say 85% of the water is being used by agriculture activities. And this particular sector, you can see it having a very low water efficiency at the rate of say 35 to 40%. So we need to focus on these, and this can be achieved only through the capacity building and other. Starting an academic course, as I have already mentioned, that we can start a dedicated course on the water informatics. So that can be an opportunity. Already one course is being, already being operational at UK. And then the collaboration with the national and international research institutes within the India and Australia, it can be another opportunity for this context. And finally, the water informatics, it can lead to more transparent systems in place, so that the public or the community, they can be informed for the decision which are being made on their local water sites or catchments, right? And regarding the water developmental projects, and that really going to save a lot of money. Why? Because due to that or non-availability of the information regarding the developmental projects, that leads to the variety of resistance to the development project in India particularly. So this is what I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nema. And I think you made some really good comments. Especially I liked your idea of water informatics, how some sort of training program or some qualification, and it's a good way to collaborate between the two countries. So now we move to the second presentation by Dr. Tim Westwood. And Tim is a research economist in the Australian Bureau of Agricultural Resource Economics and Sciences, Natural Resources Economics section. He has research background in forestry and international commodity markets. Currently, his research is focused on the Murray-Darling Basin Plan and Australian water markets. So over to you, Tim.
Great. Thank you. I'll just quickly share my screen, my slides up, and I'll get started. Okay. Great. Okay. So first, I'd just like to begin by saying thank you to the Australian Indian Institute for putting on this event and giving me the opportunity to present here today. I'd also like to just acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I am on currently here, the Ngunnawal people. I'd like to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and their ongoing contribution they make to the region and to the nation as a whole. So in today's presentation, I'm going to go through the work that ABARES does in analysing water markets in Australia. I'm going to try and focus in on the data side of the whole process. So to begin with, I just wanted to give a little bit of context about the work that we do here at ABARES. We focus on the Southern Murray-Darling Basin, otherwise known as the SMDB, because that is where the majority of water trade in Australia occurs. And that's that blue area on the map there. So the SMDB is spread across 3 states, New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia. And each of these states individually manage their own water, and each of them report on their own jurisdictions. Now, on top of those states, we also have the Commonwealth Government, that I work for. And the Commonwealth Government is involved in helping to manage the shared water resources between states, and also in the implementation of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. So ABARES' involvement is focused on analysing the effects that simulated changes in market conditions will have. So we do this via our in-house model that we have here called the water trade model. And so the findings from this model, we can use those to provide robust economic information base that policymakers can then use when they want to make their decisions. So what do we need to actually undertake that modeling? So the big thing that we rely on here is a consistent time series of information, regional data, and data about irrigation activity. So in Australia, we have the luxury of having a fairly long time series of data. So we have 20 years of data, give or take, at the moment, and that is a critical component of some of the work that we do. On the regional data side of things, you can see here that I put up a map. This is just a zoomed in version of that kind of blue area I had on the previous map. And this shows that the Southern Murray-Darling Basin is actually made up of 9 separate regions. We need to have data for each of these different regions if we want to explore the different regional effects that policies can have. And then finally, we have to consider the different irrigation activities. And by that, I mean the different kind of commodities. So things such as rice, cotton, and almonds. We need to have specific data on each of those if we want to examine the effects that a policy change or a climate shock or anything like that would have on those different commodity groups. So when you take all that together, what this means is that we need a lot of data, as you can probably imagine. And there's a balancing act between too much information and just enough, and it's always a delicate balance. But yeah, I mean, we think we've got a pretty good balance here at the moment. So this is just to give a snapshot of where we get that data from that we feed into the model. And I just like to point out this is not exhaustive, but it's just to give an illustration of some of the sources that we take our data from. And I've grouped these up into different categories. So in the left-hand box, I have the federal government, and I've included the Bureau of Meteorology there, as we heard at the start of this presentation, along with some of the other key federal government agencies involved in this space. In the middle, I have the state governments, and that's the various state governments who are in charge of managing their own water resources within their states. On the right-hand side, I have non-government agencies, and they're also primarily industry bodies, and they help to provide a bit of more specific data to help us fill in some of the gaps from some of our other sources. So you can probably imagine that this is quite challenging to compile all this information together into a consistent data set. And a lot of the work that we've done has been in this space to bring all these different sources together and put it together in a way that the model can understand. I won't focus on how we do that, but I'm more than happy to take any questions if anyone has any. So that's how we get the data, and that's where it comes from, but what do we actually do with it? And this is just a really simple visualization of the model that we have. And you basically split that data into two separate categories. You have your demand data, which covers stuff like where people are using the water, what they're using water for, and how much they're using. And then you also split it into supply data, and that covers stuff such as where the water is located, how much is available, and where it's going. So if we wanted to examine different policies, we can pull the levers of either the demand data, the supply data, or the model. And depending how we do that and which variables we change, we'll get a different answer that can then inform policy. So I've got a heap of examples, but I'll only quickly touch on one of them. And it's kind of a permanent one here, in Australia, but also I imagine in India as well. And that is is climate change and a drying climate. So if we wanted to analyze the effects of a drying climate, what we could do is we could go into the supply data and essentially take water out, make the model consider a drier climate than we are currently in now. And then we'd run the model, and then from that we would get a different set of answers, and we could then compare those answers to the current state we're in now, and we could say, great, these regions are going to be affected more than these other regions, and we think these commodity groups or these farmers are the ones who are going to bear the brunt of this. And that's really interesting. Policy, needs that kind of information to base their decisions on and how they're going to respond. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, team. And I think you really, in a very simple way, explained how water data modeling can be used to answer some of the critical questions. So thank you. And we have the last presentation from Dr. Sudeep Nair. He's a water resources engineer. His work focuses on urban water system modeling, including simulation and optimization modeling of integrated urban water systems. So he is currently working with eWater, and he has contributed into projects on water energy nexus modeling, sustainability assessment of urban water systems, and life cycle assessment. So this is the last presentation, and we are sort of over time, but I think if everyone's permission, we might take another 5-10 minutes later on for some questions. So over to you, Sudeep.
Thanks, Professor Basant, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about this issue. So myself, Sudeep, I'm a hydrologist working with eWater. I've been working for last 1 year or so. In a short notice, I was Professor Basant communicated, so I haven't prepared any presentations, but we have, let me share my screen anyway, because we have some just old presentations. So I will talk about more about what we do actually, eWater, at eWater. So actually, sorry, one second. Yeah, so what we do actually in source, we have at eWater, we develop, we operationalize research, undertake software development capacity building and support. As such, we don't collect or we don't primary data or anything, but we develop software for modeling, hydrological modeling. So in India, you might have heard of Source, developed by eWater. After Australia, so mostly Source is mostly used in India. So you can see that it's a not-for-profit Australian government-owned company. So company owned by federal and central state governments. So the Source is now considered as adopted as a national hydrological modeling platform. We have consistent platform with planning, operations, and forecasts, and it's relevant for all aspects of even water quantity, quality, all can be modeled. So this is a slide showing how the usage of eWater Source applications, and you can see that India is the second most source model user. So adaptive complexity. So coming to data, so we have the Source and music. Music is for urban water management, which I haven't mentioned in this particular slide, but we have both for rural catchment modeling, river system planning model, plus modeling in Source, and in urban water modeling, especially stormwater modeling in software called Music. So in Australia, it is quite, many people might have heard about it. I don't know about India, but so the data, so we can input a wide variety of data in data formats, and in Source you can input spatial data as well. So we focus on adaptive complexity, matching models, data, and outcomes, and then openness and community collaborative approach. And then so you can see it's a lumped, Source is a lumped model. So we don't in Source we don't need like a wide very high resolution data. So very simple parameterization is required only in Source. So it's quite easy to use as well. So these are some of the rainfall runoff, how it works and all. So I don't want to go into detail about that. But so see, when we talk about data, so mainly we talk about input data, how we can get quality data, good quality data for inputting into the model. But different models, we use different models in, around the world, but how we can get like the results for each, good quality results from each of these models, how it can be adapted to, different end users. So that we have in Source and even Music. So we have in Results Manager, we have results are displayed in the Results Manager. So there you can play around with different how you want the results to be displayed, and you can export those results to in CSV formats and many other formats, and then show to the stakeholders. So for example, in Source, in the Results Manager, so we have a lot of we have statistics, like very commonly used statistics. You can generate statistics about inflow and outflow results, even water quality results, so that you can on a high level you can show that, okay, so this is the mean, median, maximum, minimum values of the output. So, and then we work based on a agile principle. So we have, as you know, we work with different stakeholders, state governments, councils, and even private people, private firms. So they ask for, like, okay, so we want in our Results Manager, in the Source, that is Source Results Manager, we would like to see our results in this format, or for example, I will just tell one example. So for example, the Victorian Department of Land and Environment, so we are working with them to develop on a climate change scenario creation. So we have these data sources, going into the model. But how for analyzing different climate change scenarios, how can we generate replicate the data? So historical data, how can we replicate or recycle the data? So we developed a functionality called data replication. So that's one example. And then another is like in music, we have a treatment train effectiveness. So you have in urban water system, stormwater management. So we have water sensitive urban design principles and assets. So we use ponds and lakes or swales or such kind of treatment devices to treat, to improve the quality of water coming out of urban areas. So we can check the performance of that. We can compare that. So we developed in music, we have that functionality called treatment train effectiveness, where we can compare two points in the urban area and compare how it's the water flow and as well as the quality, the constituents, how at different points it's the water sensitive urban design assets are performing. So these are just a snapshot of what we developed. And so that's what I wanted to talk about in source and music, and we are developing many more functionalities as requested by different stakeholders. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. Any questions, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Sudeep. I think it was nice to hear what tools are available and how you are using them. So now we a little bit over time, but if with everyone's permission, Karen, can we say for another 5 to 7 minutes?
Yes, I think that will be fine. It would be great to have some questions.
Thank you. So any questions from anybody to the 4 panelists? So we have Dr. Lohani, Dr. Tim Westwood, Dr. Sudeep Nair, and Dr. Manish Nema. If Dr. Rohitash Kumar is still there, he can raise that question he was going to ask. So maybe I'll ask one broad question. So if you had a free hand, what would you change to make water informatics more useful in policy decisions or implementing some schemes? So I will go with Dr. Lohani. What would you change if you had free hand? One thing you want to change.
Actually, if you just see, there are a lot of things one can change in our country, as earlier mentioned, that we don't have lots of data right now. We do collect a number of data, but if you see about the, specifically in the hilly areas, the springs are there, number of springs are there. So a number of data sets are required for the spring locations, their water quantity and the water quality. So one important thing is that then the data should be easily accessible to all the users and as well as the farmers, as one of the panelists has asked about the utility of data. So this way we can just improve the utility of the data. And once the data is easily accessible, definitely we are going to have a better quality of the data. Then quality checks will be there. If the data is not being utilized properly, one cannot see whether the quality is good or the bad. Okay, so that will be pressure on the data collecting organizations also, if we make the data flow very easy to different users. So that is the important thing we have to think. And then another part is that as far as the data is concerned, some of the our participants, they have mentioned that the source data is being collected by the other organizations. Like if you see in our country, various academic institutes and other institutes, they are collecting the data either for the research purpose or they have their own observatories. So these data should be linked with the main database. So these are the some of the things as far as I remember, that during the 2013 flood in Uttarakhand, we found that the after 3 or 4 days, people are able to know the condition of the flooding over there. So these kinds of the data are very, very important. So we have to have all sources of the data in our system.
OC verification
Excuse me. Okay, thank you, Dr. Lohani. Just same quick question, Tim. What would you change, what you do to make water informatics more useful?
Yeah, great, thanks. I mean, I would also say data, but in the interest of saying something a bit different, here in Australia, you know, the work that I am doing is on the economic side of things, and then there's also the hydrology side of things that we've also heard about. And I think if we were able to marry those two things up together, the models that we could produce would be a lot more accurate, and they'd be able to give us a lot more insight into some really interesting policy questions. As it currently stands, the hydrology and the economics are kind of separate, and I think if we could bring those together, that would be really great. That is not an easy thing, so that's why if I could snap my fingers, I'd say yes. But otherwise, I think it's probably going to take us a few years of model uplift across the board if we wanted to kind of generate those responses. That's from me.
Thank you, Tim. Dr. Manish Nema, just one thing, what would you change? What you do now?
See, sir, I sincerely believe that whatever the data we are collecting or the government is collecting, that all being, the payment has been made by taxpayers. And even after that, the common public, they are not, accessible. The data is not accessible to them. So I believe whatever the data which is not of having, not very sensitive, you can say, or non-classified, that can be easily accessible to the general public. And water is something which is not, is a topic which is very confined or limited. Water is the subject which is very close to everybody. Like we are using water in day-to-day activities. Like everybody drinks water, obviously. They want to know each and everything about it. So if they will get the exposure of accessibility of the data, then this water informatics, it will evolve like anything. So they will come to know what is actually, what is the present status and how it can be. But I think, I don't know when we will reach to that stage in India, when all the data that will be open to all the public. So I will certainly bring all the data to the public whenever I get the power.
I think you made a very, very important point, the access to data to ordinary people. I think if that happens, things will change automatically. So same, Dr. Sudeep Nair. What would you change one thing?
That's a good question and tricky question. Yeah, so the same is related actually. So the streamlining of the water-related data. So currently, even in Australia, if I'm correct, so for different data, for hydrological data and meteorology data, so it's all kind of scattered. So if we can have a single agency or single web-based system where we can get all this kind of water-related data in one particular platform, that would be very useful. So that I would stream off. And another one is, the second point is like, okay, so we have the data and how to visualize this data so that and everybody, even a common layman, can understand. Like, so because I'm saying this because I have an opportunity to review all these web-based tools or dashboards or hydrological dashboards around the world, and to how effectively we can show these, we have this discharge data or water level data, especially in terms of in rivers. So how like we can show to the world, people, that is whether it is average flow or is it there is an alteration happen in the upstream, so that made the change in flows, such kind of things like data visualization to be very accessible to all people in a very simple but effective way. So these two are my comments right at the moment.
Thank you. I think visualization is very important because that helps you to really internalize what's happening or what can be done. So,
sir, one more thing can I add here? Just 1 second.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
Actually, right now we do require our database in such a fashion. Like if you see, we have seen the site like Site Radar 24 or Google Map. So similarly, we do have a map of the country, over which if we put somewhere our cursor, then we know that how much flow is there right now in the river, because we have the telemetry system, everything. We should have put cursor on a specific reservoir. We know that how much water is there. So the availability of the water should be available to everybody, that how much water we do have at a particular moment in our country at various places. So these type of systems should be there in my.
Thank you. I think really good final comment. So I'd hand over to Dr. Karen Barker.
Thanks very much, Basant. And in fact, could I add my thanks to all of the speakers as well for their insights, and to our moderators and all our participants. Before I go on, I just want to introduce you to Henry Strong. He's from the Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment, and he'd like to say a very short few words. Thanks, Henry.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you to everybody who's attended today. Look, apologies, my camera won't be on today. I'm working from home and there's no blur on Zoom. So look, I just wanted to say on behalf of the Australian Government Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment, how pleased we are to have had this opportunity to engage bilaterally with Indian counterparts and research institutions, National Hydrology Project, Central Water Commission on these important topics. It is a priority engagement for us with India under the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, but also under the MOU. So I just wanted to take the opportunity on behalf of my department to thank the CWC, National Hydrology Project, and all of our speakers, too many to name over the last, the last 4 weeks, the last 4 workshops, I should say. The Australia-India Water Centre has proven to be a very useful platform and a valuable platform to the government, I think, of both countries for knowledge exchange on this topic. So we look forward to engaging in the future. Thank you also to the Australia-India Institute and Arch India as well for allowing our water workshops to be combined with the food security workshops to put together this technical exchange program. So look, on behalf of our department and all the Australian agencies that were involved, thank you very much for this opportunity to collaborate, and we look forward to doing the same again in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry, and I'd like to echo my thanks, special thanks to Professor Basant Maheshwari for bringing us all together and for working so hard to make these so successful, and for bringing a great team with him. So we really appreciated all that support, and also special thanks to Mr. Rakesh Kashyap and Dr. Rajaram Purohit from the Jal Shakti Ministry for all their support for the workshops. As I mentioned, I think earlier, we're going to be preparing a report for our various government departments that will capture the discussions that we've had today, and in particular highlight the priority areas for future research collaboration. And so what I'd like to do is invite you, if you've undertaken some research collaboration between Australia and India, we're really interested in collecting some of those examples as case studies that I think some of the feedback from the breakout session referred to what we can learn from each other. So that's what we'd like to do. So if you've got some case studies you'd like to share, please get in touch. We'll be sending an email around that you can reply to. This really brings us to the end of our workshop series, and I'd really like to thank my colleague Alex Stott, who's worked so hard on these events to pull them off so perfectly, and other members of our team, Philip Grimes, Archit Agrawal and Brina Barrett, for their contribution. But back to you. If you've been inspired to think about some research collaboration between Australia and India, we're inviting you to stay on after the end of the program. So stay on right now. We're setting up 3 different rooms with some topic areas that you can choose. And the first one will be on water data information to knowledge. The second one on the application of water informatics. and the third is on water planning. So if you would like to talk to like-minded researchers about your research in those areas and potential future collaborations, I would really encourage you to join the networking room. Those of you who've been on these sessions before, you'll know the deal, how it works. You'll see a pop-up shortly on the screen inviting you to join the networking rooms. Actually, there's two things that might pop up on your screen. One is a poll asking you to provide some quick feedback on the workshop. So we hope you'll just take a few moments to fill that out. And once that disappears from your screen, you will get the invitation to join a networking room. So these rooms are self-moderated, they're not recorded, they're just for you to tell the other people in the room about yourself and your research and what you'd like to collaborate on.